Good afternoon and half a day. The Committee on General Government Operation and Appropriation is now called to order. Today is Friday, July 7th. The time now is 2:02. In compliance with the Open Government Law, the notice for this public hearing were posted on Gov Guam Public Notice Portal KGTF, PBS Channel 12, and disseminated via email to all senators and all main media broadcasting outlets on Tuesday, June 13th, then change one on June 27th, then Thursday, June 29th. And we'll change one on Wednesday, July 5th. The following agenda will be heard this afternoon. It's on Bill 26-37 COR, Committee on Rules by request of I Magaʹhågan Guåhan, the Governor of Guam, in accordance with the Organic Act of Guam. An act making appropriation for the operation of the executive branch of the Government of Guam for fiscal year ending September 30, 2024, making other appropriations and establishing miscellaneous administrative provisions relative to the Department of Revenue and Taxation. At this time, I'd ask the members of the Department of Revenue and Taxation that are sitting as the panel, the Director and Deputy Director, please rise while with the Sergeant Arms recess. Stand by, have a seat. Their system. Is it on? You can hear me, right? Okay, there you go. I'd ask Ms. Shimizu and Ms. Zama to please rise while the Sergeant Arms will swear you in.
Please raise your right hand. Under penalty of perjury, you all affirm that any and all information you provide today, whether it be verbally, electronically, and in writing, be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Yes. Thank you. Mr. Chair, you're under oath. You may proceed.
Thank you. General rules for this budget hearing. Please provide my legislative staff with any document for photocopying and distribution. Panel members are asked to remain in the room for questions or for additional testimony, as may be desired by members of the committee. Questions and testimony shall be confined to the substance or nature of the agenda. Personal inference as to the character or the motive of any senator or any individual testifying is not permitted. Any violation of general rule of conduct will result in removal from the budget hearing. Proper form and decorum shall be practiced by all present in the public hearing room for these proceedings. Individuals who fail to maintain proper form and decorum will be restricted from participating and will be removed from the room. When you speak, please make sure that the microphone is on and that you speak into the microphone. Please state your name and your title for the record. I'd like to thank my colleagues for attending this afternoon's budget hearing. I have my Vice Chair, Senator Tello Taidegui. I have the Speaker, Therese Terlai, the Oversight Chair for Department of Revenue Tax, Senator Sabina Perez. I have Senator Tom Fisher and Senator Roy Canata. Ms. Simsu, I will ask you now to go ahead, and I know you have a PowerPoint, to go ahead and begin your presentation of your budget.
Happy to, and thank you so much, Senator San Agustin. I want to thank you for the opportunity to present the FY 2024 budget for the Department of Revenue and Taxation. I also want to thank the members of the committee, Speaker Terlahi, our Oversight Chair, Senator Perez, Senator Fisher, Senator Canata, and Senator Taidegui for being here. My name is Daphne Shimizu, and I'm the Director of the Guam Department of Revenue and Taxation. I also like to recognize here with me is our Deputy Director, Mrs. Marie Lazama. I do have a few of my members of my agency who are here as well with me, our Acting ASO, and also we have someone here as well who is in one of our licensing branches, but who assists us in administration, who's also here to support us. And I'd also like to recognize our DRT team, who is not here, but I honestly can't say thank you enough to my team for all the hard work and dedication that they have to be able to get their jobs done that we do at our agency. And so if you'll please go ahead and put up the PowerPoint slide. Next page, please. So today we'll be going through our mission statement, our goals and objectives. We'll be providing a little bit of budget data and a summary, going through some accomplishments, and then also we'll be going through some of what we believe we have to look forward to in FY 2024.
Good afternoon. My name is Marie Lazama. I am the Deputy Director for the department. And I'd like to just acknowledge Senator San Agustin and our Oversight Chair, Senator Perez, as well as Speaker Terlahi, Senator Fisher, Senator Canata, and Senator Taidegui. Thank you so much for allowing us to present our budget. Our agency's mission is to apply and enforce licensing laws with integrity and fairness and encourage voluntary compliance by educating customers to enhance and maintain public confidence. Next slide, please. Our purpose. We are charged with the enforcement of the tax laws of Guam and the collection of revenue. We are also responsible for licensing and registration, as well as the allied and connected enforcement functions. Next slide. The department's goals and objectives are to increase enforcement efforts and to establish and maintain public confidence in both the local and the internal revenue tax systems as they apply to Guam. We want to increase taxpayer awareness of laws, related laws, and reporting responsibilities, and of course, obtain a high rate of voluntary compliance. We also wish to regulate holders of licenses for the protection of the consumers of Guam from unsafe, unsound, and unfair practices. We want to improve e-commerce services as it pertains to the timely filing and submission of applications, tax documents, and/or business forms. We also aim to increase the expertise of staff and maximize capability to support our programs and serve taxpayers. We want to provide quality services in a cost-effective and timely manner. We wish to enhance and improve those systems and processes to reduce customer wait times in lines, and finally, to maintain support and assistance to our regulatory boards and commissions to fulfill mandates. Some of the boards and commissions we have are the Alcoholic Beverage Control Board, the Board of Equalization, the Banking and Insurance Board, the Cannabis Control Board, the Real Estate Commission, the Guam Unarmed Combat Commission, and the Tow Truck Advisory Board. Next slide. So unlike other jurisdictions, we actually have a whole bunch of other areas over which we oversee. And that is, it amounts to about 21 of them. So if you look under executive direction, of course, we have the director's office, we have passport office, we have technical research and appeals bureau, we have systems and programming. Moving over to tax enforcement division, we have the criminal investigation branch, we have tax examination, and we have collections. Under taxpayer services, we do have the income tax assistance and processing branch. We have the business privilege tax. Some of you know it as DRT. And then we also have electronic data processing, central files, and accounting. Real property, we have the appraisal and assessment areas. Under regulatory, we have insurance, securities, banking, and real estate, as well as general licensing, otherwise known as business license, and compliance and weights and measures. Finally, we have the motor vehicle division, which consists of the driver's license, vehicle registration, and motor carrier safety assistance program areas. Again, these are what we oversee, some of which are people probably aren't aware that we are responsible for them. Next slide. This is just our organizational charts, and our chart rather. And if we could just go over to the budget highlights, please. Next slide. Okay. We are asking for $17.3 million for fiscal year 24. This is an increase of $1.34 million, mainly pertaining to personnel and operations. In addition, we are requesting for nearly $400,000 for the banking and insurance fund. Now, historically, this fund has been included as and has been appropriated to fund operational items. However, our agency is requesting for this to be appropriated separately this fiscal year. Okay. It should be noted that our current building lease ends in September of this year. We've been working on issuing an IFB through the GSA. And again, to note that the FY24 budget reflects the monthly rent at the current contracted level.
And so on this slide, what you'll see is a comparison of our FY 2022, FY 2023, and FY 2024 budgets. And it's important to note that for FY 2022, why there seems to be such a large difference is because we did actually have an unappropriated fund. And so we used to receive 10% of the additional child tax credit, which was about $1.8 million. With the changes in the with the changes to the, I guess, to our tax code, and which allowed and authorized certain payments for EITC and the regular child tax credit, the way that that particular fund actually went away. And so what happens now is, instead of us having 10% of that additional child tax credit, the entire amount of I guess of what we utilize is now, that amount now is being funded by the general fund. So in FY 2023, our authorized levels were $15.945 million, and for FY 2024, the executive budget request was about $17.3 million. And again, we are requesting for the banking and insurance fund to be appropriated separately. Next slide, please. This is a breakdown of our FY 2024 executive budget requests by category, so that you can see here, what are the categories that we are, and how much are being paid out from each category. Personnel makes up the majority of our expenditures, and that's 78%, or about $13.45 million. Contractual is right behind it at $2.1 million, or about 12% of our budget. We do have our building rent, which is inclusive of power, and that is $1.37 million, and that is about 8% of our budget. And the remaining amounts for miscellaneous equipment, utilities, and supplies represent about 2% of our budget. Next slide, please. And so here is a comparison of our the amounts that we allocate for personnel and operations year over year. Next slide, please. And this is a breakdown of the general fund versus special fund categories. Again, noting that in FY 2022, the large disparity is because of the the additional child tax credit is no longer funded in the way that it was, and we now get those payments through the general fund. Next slide, please. And so now we wanted to just kind of go through some of our agency's accomplishments. Next slide. Something that we've been working hard to do over the last few years, and I believe that we've, come to a point where it's, we continue though to work to issue refund payments as fast as or as quick as possible. As of June 29, we processed and paid through April 20, 2023 file date. Next slide. So over the next two slides, this slide actually shows the total of the total individual income tax returns filed year over year, comparing at the month of May. So from May 2019 to May 2023. If you'll notice, pre-COVID, we had about 25,000, or just a little bit shy of 26,000 returns filed as of May 2019. And in the years after that, when we had COVID, and when, of course, there was a lot of aid coming, but it had to come through, the mechanism was the tax return. So we do see in May 2020 that increased to 44,000. May 2021, which was tax year 2020, about a little bit over 40,000. In May 2022, for tax year 2021, we saw that go up because of, likely because there was the child tax credit that was now funded, and there was an increase in the child tax credit as well. So people filed their returns more quickly so that they can get those monies. And as of May 2023, for 2022 returns only, we saw a little bit over 49,000 returns filed. And the reason this is important is because if we look back, again, pre-COVID, compared with where we are today, the amount of returns that we're seeing filed earlier has basically doubled. And if you'll go to the next slide, please. Yeah. And so this slide here shows the total number of refund returns processed and paid year over year from May 2019 to May 2023. And this is important. Again, earlier you saw in the slide previous that, where the level of work that we saw up front in the beginning of the year really increased because, we did have almost double the amount of returns to process, again, year over year when we compare pre-COVID to post-COVID, and then now that we're in 2023. But that the number of refunds processed and paid also increased. And in fact, as of May 2023, for 2022 refunds only, we paid out 39,091 refunds, with about over 21% of those being paid by direct deposit. And that's significant because we really only began to make payments by direct deposit a couple of years ago. So that was something that just was established a couple of years ago. And again, as we've been working toward modernization, we've been trying to reduce the amount of, not just the amount of manual processing, but the amount of supplies that's needed in order to get payments out. So, that is 8,300 less envelopes, less stamps, less paper checks that had to go out. So again, we believe that that's significant. And in addition to that, as we work to try to pay refunds out more quickly, that's actually saved the government of Guam probably about $1.5 million each year in interest payments. So because we're processing and paying more quickly, people are not only getting their money more quickly, but the government is also saving about $1.5 million a year in interest. Next slide, please. And in this slide, we just wanted to share how much in current year tax refunds have been paid through May 2023. And again, as of May 2022 for 2021, and again, these are only current year returns. As of May 2022, we'd paid $111 million. This year, we paid about $103 million. But again, we're at over $100 million, and this is something, that is not historically been seen. Next slide, please. So again, we've been really working to try to, again, to to modernize and to reduce the amount of manual work. And this particular slide, we believe, is important because, of course, you know, as we got out of, as we actually began to receive e-filed forms 1040 since 2005, the average number of returns that were filed online from 2005 to 2018, which is pre-COVID, was about 1,300. And of course, as we got into a COVID period, there was, you know, more of a need for people to file online, so because we were not able to open up to the public. But what we did also do for 2020 tax year, which caused that huge spike from 1996 to 7,700, is we enhanced what you could file online. We expanded it so that it went beyond what you could file, because previously we only allowed for what was previously called a 1040EZ, which meant that if you had dependents, if you had income over $100,000, you could not file. And if you took certain credits, you couldn't file online. So for the 2022 tax year, as of June 2023, we have 8,211 people who filed, or taxpayers who filed online. And so, you know, where we were less than 2% historically, we went up to 9% and then 10.5% last year, and likely we'll hit 11 to 12% of people who will be filing online. And why that's important? If you take those 8,211 tax returns and you multiply it by 30 minutes, which is probably a low estimate of how long it takes to process a return, because there's a lot involved in it, that's 246,330 minutes. That's 4,105 hours. That's 2 full-time employees. And so for us, you know, again, as we've worked to try to address, you know, what people are seeing, which is people are short-staffed, et cetera, you know, this has been hugely helpful to us because it's helped to reduce the amount of processing that we have to do, at least for those 8,211 returns. And of course, our desire is to move away from manual processing so that that way we can do more analysis and more higher level work. Next slide, please. In addition to what we've seen in terms of online services for taxes, we've also, back in 2021, launched our online renewals and replacements for certain Guam IDs and Guam driver's licenses. And so as of June 2023, there have been 5,129 online renewals for Guam IDs, renewals and replacements for Guam IDs and Guam driver's licenses. That's 5,000 people that did not have to come into our office to wait in line. And so we believe that that's pretty significant. And this represents about 6% of the population that gets driver's license or Guam ID. Next slide, please. And as well in vehicle registration, we continue to encourage people to register online. There are actually businesses, safety inspection businesses, that also have gone into the business of helping people register their vehicles online. And so where we are is about 42%, or 53,215 as of fiscal year 2022, 42% of our vehicles were registered online. Next slide, please. And again, this is just another kind of slide that shows how many people we have seen as walk-in versus online over the last couple fiscal years. Next slide.
Okay, continuing on with other accomplishments. Under our compliance branch, we recently conducted inspections of 78 on and off-sale licensed beverage establishments, which resulted in 10 notices of violation and $15,000 in penalties. Those inspections also yielded information used by the Alcoholic Beverage Control Board to effectuate a 90-day suspension of an alcohol license, and which resulted in the seizure of approximately $300,000 in alcoholic beverages. The other thing that we have done, and it needs to be noted, it has never been filled since it was enacted into law, is we were able to hire for the Office of the Guam Principal Territorial Income Tax Attorney. Having this greatly, I mean, it has been so helpful to the director and me and our staff, as well as the rest, some of the other management team. And that's just, you know, to have the ability for a whole range of things, not necessarily just tax related, but anything under the director's purview. Moving on to the next slide. We do have some accomplishments also in insurance and banking and securities and real estate. One of which is we've established a 30-hour pre-licensing exam on insurance. We have an online continuing education review course and exam with WebCE, and Guam is listed there. We are going to establish the state-based system. So basically, you will be able to see more, or it'll be a faster and more effective way to look up the information of who is licensed for insurance. Under securities and real estate, we did secure a membership with the North American Securities Administrations Association, or NASA, and that's primarily to protect Guam investors from fraud. We have a hosting agreement with the Bank of New York, Mellon. This is a financial services company, and basically what happens is, any informational documents, it displays that from the investment advisor registered with the Securities and Exchange Commission. In addition, we have the online process of securities license applications with FINRA, or the Financial Industry Regulatory Authority. Next slide. So what do we have in store for the future? What we did was we it pretty much aligned with some of the IRS's goals and objectives in their strategic plan for fiscal year 2022 through 2026. And there are several areas, and what we did was we kind of localized it, specific to Guam. So under people, we are going to address, or we need to focus on long-term workforce planning, recruitment, hiring and retention, particularly for those positions which require technical expertise. We want to include training, and that's to include things that are new now. For example, digital assets, which the IRS is now monitoring. We will engage, or we are scheduled to have additional IRS training for the collections branch, and we are going to have actual IRS training or additional IRS training for the audit and examination branch. And we want to also foster an inclusive and empowered workforce, and we want to strengthen our relationships with stakeholders and our external partners. For example, the American Association of Motor Vehicle Administrators, and locally the Guam Chamber of Commerce. In the area of modernization or transformation, we want to increase digitalization. We want to maximize our efficiencies, and we want to ensure that we procure the equipment that will assist with that. In our driver's license branch, we talked about this a little while ago, but it kind of hit a snag, and we are continuing on with it, and that's the launching of the self-serve kiosks. What has typically happened is someone will come in and probably be behind someone who's getting a new credential for the first time, and obviously that takes a longer period versus someone who is simply just looking to renew and whose information is already in the system. So we want to be able to provide an area so that it's kind of self-service and be able to kind of speed up, the wait or lessen the amount of people that are in the lobby. With regard to enforcement, we want to improve, or we plan to improve our efforts to address non-compliance. And then finally, service. We want to provide proactive outreach and educational awareness, as well as address the needs of those who are multilingual in our community. Thank you.
And with that, I just, again, would like to say thank you so much to you, Senator Agustin, and to the committee for the opportunity to provide this presentation to you. And we respectfully request for your favorable approval of our budget request. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Shimizu and Ms. Lizama. I guess a simple question, because I'm a former revenue and tax employee, so I'm pretty knowledgeable about what it takes to run revenue and tax. But I have a question from your page 9 PowerPoint. Banking and Insurance Fund to be appropriate separately. What do you use it for?
So to share with you, the Banking and Insurance Fund actually historically has been appropriated by the legislature and has been utilized for the purpose of operations, general operations. But if you look at, I believe it's 11 GCA Chapter 103, Section 103, 120, which created the Banking and Insurance Enforcement Fund. That particular fund, it states in the law, shall not be commingled with a general fund or any other fund of the Government of Guam, and shall be held in an account or accounts at a Guam financial institution, and shall not be subject to the Governor of Guam's transfer authority, and shall be used for enforcement within the purview of the Office of the Commissioner of Banking and Insurance and the Banking and Insurance Board, subject to appropriations. So historically, what has been happening is our budget has been inclusive of the fund, and it's been utilized for items that are not related to what is supposed to be done per the law, and that has been the practice. And so as we've gone and we've researched it, what we are asking now the legislature is to appropriate appropriate the 17.2 or 17.3 million out of the sources that we can use for our general operations. And then, of course, in the Budget Act, in the budget bill, you'll see there was 395,127 that was indicated as on the special funds section that is for the Banking and Insurance Fund, and we're asking for that to be separate so that we can make sure that, again, that we're following the law as we utilize these monies.
But I'm going to safe to assume now that because this has been going on for decades, that none of the directors were misusing the money when they should have used it for insurance and banking, right? I'm just going to clearly state that
well,
your hands are clean.
Well, it was brought to my attention, really, like, especially in this year, we've really looked to research it because it's been brought up a few times, and we just want to make sure. And so we've actually talked with our own legal counsel, tried to figure out, again, what is allowed in the law, and we want to make sure that we follow the law as we work to make sure, we certify funds as well. We want to make sure that the source of funds is used for what it should be.
I'm not doubting
Yeah.
that. I understand when you cite the Guam Code. I'm just saying it's
So-
it's safe to assume for the decades that
Yeah.
budget's been passed,
Right.
nobody has been misusing the money, right? I mean, you were doing what you could, not knowing what was in the law. Am I correct?
Well,
Let me just say yes.
right. I
and
mean,
it
that's
clears.
how it's been. But I could also say that one thing that I did mention, because I did talk with Senator Perez about this as well, even in the beginning of the year, is that, of course, we do have our insurance, securities, banking, real estate group, and their salaries and wages, which is about, including benefits, is about $700,000, right? Also, there's no allocation for rent and other things. So it's, it can be argued, I suppose, that some of the enforcement is paid for by the general fund, and maybe, again, that is possible, that's how it's used, but how it's practically, I think, been approached from a budgetary perspective, at least until right now, is that it has been appropriated as if it's going to be used for general operations.
Understood. Now, does the department intend on hiring separate enforcers versus you got the compliance branch that does enforcement for banking and insurance?
It's my understanding from discussing with the Insurance and Banking Commissioner that she does want to, I believe, work on additional enforcement efforts, but I don't have the details for that.
Okay. The reason why I asked that, because I couldn't support that part. Until insurance and banking get their act together and they come up with a comprehensive plan on how they plan on using that funds, then we can work with that. But to say, well, I'm going to use this money to hire more people, and then you still need to go through the whole there's a long list, Dav, and I know you know where I'm coming from. I just want us to be very careful. Supporting what the intent of the law is the easiest part, but making sure that it's not being abused. All of a sudden, I'm going to hire a bunch of people to enforce insurance and banking. What were you doing before? When I know for a fact, compliance branch is supposed to be doing that, any enforcement. Anything that's regulatory, which is insurance and banking. Then you got your criminal investigation branch, which can also do enforcement. So you got a lot of assets, and I'm not going to debate that
Right.
any further.
Thank you, Senator.
am
And I
no-
do understand your point with regards to the regulatory function and how there's other
Yes.
branches that have actually contributed to that particular function. So
Okay.
thank you for that comment.
All right, and then, I did call you earlier about, but we'll talk about that offline, on that other issue. But I'd like to also recognize Senator Brown, who's also joined us this afternoon. Before I ask my vice to ask questions, I'm gonna ask the Oversight Chair for Revenue and Tax, if she have any comments or questions. Time out again? Okay, let's pause for a minute. Yeah, at least the aircon's working. Good afternoon. Now we're back on. We'll probably have these breaks every now and then. Hopefully not as many. Senator Paris, and then followed by Senator Tideway, and then we're going to go with the first colleague that showed up. We'll move along from there. Senator Paris.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good afternoon, Director Shimazu and Deputy Lazama. So I just want to clarify for the record. So in the budget that was submitted to the legislature, just going back to the question about the Banking and Insurance Fund. So do you certify that, or do you agree that what's written in this budget is accurate in regards to the expenditure of the Banking and Insurance Fund monies?
In our budget.
Yes, in your budget.
So I mean, again, the way that our budget, are you referring to a specific page? Are you referring to like the source of funds or?
Towards the end of the budget submittal, there is one specific to the Banking and Insurance Enforcement Fund. And so are you validating that this is accurate for the upcoming budget year?
Would you mind if I just make sure that we're looking at the same page, Senator Perez? Sorry, I just want to make sure that we're,
It doesn't,
don't-
unfortunately, the budget
Okay.
is not numbered.
okay. No, okay, so you're,
Sequentially.
thank you.
Sorry, the
Hold on.
original budget that was
Got it.
submitted.
So I'm looking at
Yeah.
this, which is what I believe you're looking at.
Yes.
But I was given this, so.
But has it changed since the new supplemental budget was submitted?
I haven't submitted a supplemental budget.
Or
We only submitted this one single, the same budget. We hadn't submitted anything, but again, anything supplemental. But of course, in our presentation, as we were preparing, we really wanted to make sure we address this issue because it's come up multiple times. So this particular budget document has not changed. We've not submitted a supplemental, ma'am.
So you can attest that this is what the money's going to be spent on?
Right, so based on what we had submitted, that was the intention with regards to the budget, yes.
Okay. Because according to this, there is no money for personnel. It's strictly for contractual services. For actuaries is one thing, and which is something that the commissioner had requested, and so I'm glad to see that this is included.
Right.
So a lot of the needs that were mentioned is included in this budget. So you can confirm that this is true and correct.
Right, so what we submitted and certified, yes, this is what that is, and of course, we have, yes, thank you.
Okay, because a minute ago, I thought it might have been a little bit of, you were mentioning that personnel costs were regarding this fund, and I just wanted to make sure that what we have listed in the budget is the intent.
To clarify, I guess how I understood Senator San Agustin's question was with regards to the use of the funds, and if there were, and of course, I think what I was trying to share is that also there's general fund monies that is used as well for banking and insurance enforcement, and so I guess that's what I was trying to share.
Okay, yeah, because according to law, it states that the fund shall be used for enforcement within the purview of the Office of the Commissioner
Correct.
of Banking and Insurance and the
Yep.
Banking and Insurance Board, subject to appropriation. So this is something that I've done in the past budget cycles, is actually set it apart, but within the DRT budget. So this has been part of the language where we did include that as a separate item. Is this something, are you
Well,
requesting something
but if
different
you
from
look-
what was
if-
stated?
If you look at the executive budget and the budget bill, the special revenue funds to include the banking and insurance fund is included in the 2.3 special funds that is funding our operations.
Yeah, so but if you look at the budget bills that we've passed in the
Right.
past, we've actually changed the language, I believe in the past 2 budget cycles or more, to separate that out from the
Right.
DRT operations.
Correct.
Okay, so you're in agreement with this? The language, if maybe we could show you that language
Yeah,
later?
maybe that would be helpful, thank you.
Okay.
I don't want to answer, and I'm not entirely sure what your question is.
Okay, great. And will the commissioner have access to the funds?
Absolutely, and in fact,
Okay.
you know what, just to share with you, with regards to, and I did actually ask the question to the commissioner, was there any point where perhaps there was things that were requested for that were not funded? And I don't believe that that's the case. And I believe that perhaps, again, it comes back to just kind of the issue of the fact that I believe that the way that it's been funded is it's been funded as part of our operations, inclusive of our operations, which again, that is something that maybe needs to be clarified. But with regards to the use of the fund, the Insurance and Banking Commissioner has the authority over it, and there's no issue with that
And
or concern.
And should be granted access to the fund?
Absolutely,
Okay.
yes, yeah.
Okay, thank you so much for that. And I do appreciate
Of course.
those efforts to upgrade what was done versus what was done in the past.
Right, and again, I just wanted to make sure, we wanted to make sure we brought it to the attention of the body, and also that we asked for it in the way that we believe that it should be to be done.
Okay, so I guess part of this budget hearing is to really figure out how do we right-size government. And so looking at your budget, what really stands out is the amount of LTAs in the executive office. And in fact, can you explain, how did you get to the H1 level of pay?
How did
And what are the criteria for an LTA?
The criteria for an LTA, my understanding is that LTA must be able to meet the qualifications for a position. And of course, before an LTA is hired, we do work with the Department of Administration to make sure that they qualify for the position.
Okay, so, my concern is that, looking at the overall budget summary, 25% of the personnel costs are in the executive office. And a big part of that is unclassified LTA positions. And my concern is how they're being used and whether it's according to personnel guidelines.
Okay.
So what is your understanding of LTAs as far as hiring them and the length of employment?
Well, of course, my understanding is that LTA should not be, LTA means limited term employment, and of course the idea is that they're meant to be temporary. But I will share with you that we actually had somebody who retired out of our office who was with us for over 20 years, and she just retired this year. And so, again, one thing that we have done is we've met with our LTAs to talk with them about making sure that they are aware that LTA, or that their service is meant to be temporary. And to also share with them, again, where to look for at the DOI website for those particular positions. And we actually have been working on active recruitment for various positions. But, just to share with you, Senator Perez, and we do understand the concern about LTAs, but to share with you, it is challenging, it is challenging at times to get hired or to get hires. We have positions for which that have been open, where there have been open recruitments for years, and we have not gotten any applicants for. We at least haven't got any certification packets. In addition to that, we had at least two sets of interviews this year for positions where we received the certification packets from DOA. We scheduled the interviews, and then people didn't show up. And they not only didn't show up, but they didn't call to let us know they were not going to show up. So, I think this is not unique to Guam. Recently, I was attending an AICPA webinar with European countries. And so where before they were talking about the great restructuring, now there's this great reshuffling. And I know, actually, Senator Perez, you had actually even, of course, we met to discuss the issues that exist because of, perhaps we may need to look at hiring in a different way. With regards to what employees are looking for, a lot of people are looking for more flexibility. They're looking for perhaps some meaning. And the other part, because now what it's being called, and it's not the Great Resignation, it's called the Great Reshuffling. People are suffering from burnout. There's a great number of people that are suffering from burnout, and they're looking for meaning in their jobs. They're looking for higher pay. So there's a lot of different things happening, and I think, I believe that DOA is well aware of, just kind of the environment that we. It's like, again, it's not unique to Guam, and we've also had some challenges, as you know, with recruitment, which is of course, why we had met, is to address the issues of our recruitment.
Okay, so what are the qualifications of these LTAs when you hired them? There's over a good maybe, and not only that, so I must also say that your current budget has the same names as this proposed budget, which I believe is not compliant with what an LTA position is. So I really have great concerns about the stacking within the executive division, and again, we want to talk about right sizing, right? And
Absolutely.
there have been many audits about leakages, tax leakages. And what I see in your budget is there's an understaffing in those areas of great need. There's even vacancies, but yet I see within the executive department, there's a lot of LTAs. I would say it's not in compliance with personnel regulations. And there's really a question as to, are we really truly right-sizing the department, which has all these mandates?
Sure.
And we have discussed successional planning, but that's one of the issues
sure.
too.
I mean, what I can say is that we're short-staffed in every single branch in our agency. Even for those branches where we have had lots of hiring. For example, we've had probably the most hiring in our income tax branch. But we've also had people who have left. We've actually had 2 people who passed away recently, just this year. We've had people who have left to go to other agencies. And so what our plan is, Senator Perez, is as we have people who leave us from, especially in the LTAs, and we'd met with them already to discuss this, is that to the extent possible, we want to, instead of funding another LTA position, fund a vacant, unfunded, classified position so we can begin to transition, and that's our plan for this coming fiscal year. So I do understand your concern, and perhaps if you do believe that there is some issue, then perhaps we can discuss that further so I can understand.
Yeah, I believe because this is an important time, right? The budget is an
Sure.
important time where it's going to determine how we're going to utilize the money to fund your mandates. And what I'm seeing is that there is a mismatch between the need and what the resources are being put towards when it comes to enforcement, when it comes to compliance,
Sure. So to
versus what's in the executive office.
So to clarify, although they may be shown as in the executive direction branch, they actually may be in income tax, they may be in BPT. We have some LTAs even in an LTA in our regulatory branch. So although they may be showing here just in executive direction, they actually practically may be in another area and actually processing returns or processing BPT. And so again, I understand perhaps it's just because it's under executive direction, but just because it's in an executive direction doesn't mean that that's where they are, because they are actually out in the branches doing the work.
Okay, and then why did you choose H1 for all of them? Is there a reason? Because that's pretty high pay, and I imagine there are some long-term employees that have been paid less.
I'm sorry, but I would have to go back and look. I am not sure why H1. I would have to get back to you.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's a concern for me, is are we really using the resources where it's mostly needed? Okay, the other questions that I have are related to the role of the attorneys, for instance. So you recently hired a tax attorney.
Yes.
Do you have the individual's name?
We have, our attorneys are Rebecca Perez-Copper and also Carl Espaldon.
But the tax attorney, that's
The
different?
principal tax attorney is Rebecca Perez-Copper.
Okay. Because that's not what's listed in the budget. So is she unclassified or
No,
classified?
she's unclassified. The principal territorial income tax attorney is not a classified position. It's an unclassified position. Okay. And she is listed in our staffing pattern in the executive direction section number 9.
Yeah, okay, so I guess there was a mislabeling of that. So what about the other attorney? So you have 2 attorneys on staff.
Correct.
What is the purpose for another attorney?
So just so you know, to kind of give some history to this, back in FY 2018, I believe, or FY 2019 when I came on board, there was $300,000 that was in our budget for the principal territorial income tax attorney, and that was in the FY 2019 budget, and of course, I came in January 2019, so that was already in place. Historically, we have had challenges in recruiting an attorney, and in fact, over the last 4 years, I have actually reached out to at least 5 different attorneys in hopes that we were able to hire them. Honestly, we were fortunate to be able to get a couple of attorneys again because we have not been able to hire for that position. But with regards to what they work on, of course, it is specified or is indicated in the law what is allowed with regards to the principal territorial income tax attorney. That's in our law. But we have had some cases that have been transferred from the AG's office, so there have been substitutions of counsel that have been provided for certain cases that have come from the AG's office. So our attorneys work on those items. They work on assisting us also as we work to address and look at the law to make sure that we are following the law. So I mean, again, they serve the purpose as indicated in the law.
Okay, thank you. And in regards to your criminal investigation, tax examination, tax collection, so in your budget, you've stated that number of cases closed. Can you confirm the number that was closed for 2022, anticipated level for 2023? And I just wanted to kind of confirm what these numbers, are these accurate numbers, and where did you get them from?
So as we worked on our budget, of course, our ASO, our acting ASO did actually reach out to, it's my understanding that he did reach out to our agency or our branches, our supervisors, to provide, so that they could provide input on those information. And so my understanding is, again, that those were numbers that we may have had as estimates, but those were actually, they should have been vetted or at least confirmed with our branch supervisors.
So you'll be providing the updated information to the committee?
I'm sorry.
Will you be providing updated information? If you're saying that they may not be the accurate quantity.
Yep. Yes, ma'am. We can go ahead and provide that to you.
And if you can email it to me as well.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Where are you at with the collectibles? What amount do you have to collect as far as taxes?
So with regards to our regular AR, well, first of all, I wanted to share, I believe I did provide an update on that a while ago. I'm sorry, I need to go back to our notes on that. But with regards to collections, and in particular during this period because of Typhoon Mawar, I know you reached out to me because there were certain areas of concern because our taxpayers or people may not have been able to come into our office to renew business licenses, et cetera. And in line, and especially because it is not only is it a disaster, but it's a presidentially declared disaster. What we have done, and in the IRS website, you can also find where the IRS themselves have indicated that there is some consideration that's given for certain areas in tax. So what we've done over the last couple months since Typhoon Mawar as well is that there's certain collections processes, and of course we make sure that we do perfect the government's interest in those items that if we have to do levies, liens, warrants, but there are certain things that we have for perhaps provided consideration on in collections so that we give some relief in terms of sending of notices to people during this time.
What is the amount?
I don't have the total amount right now, and I'll have to get that to you, ma'am.
Okay, so again, we really need to shore up the resources for these departments that are, that looks like there's shortfalls in regards to compliance. And, cannabis, I didn't even see anything in the budget in regards to cannabis other than the commission, supporting the commission members.
Right, and there's nothing, and of course we did talk with our compliance branch. In the last year we did talk more about cannabis, and of course because we had, in the last year we had worked to launch the licensing process for that, and we did issue the, I guess the guidelines, the 6 steps to getting a cannabis business license. There have been challenges to the issue of issuing cannabis licenses. We have issued, I believe, 12 responsible official cannabis identification cards, but that's just like the very first step. The next step after the cannabis identification card is what's called the cannabis establishment license, but that's still not the business license. And where we are is we've only had one applicant, I believe, who has submitted a cannabis application, a cannabis establishment license application, and that particular application, as I understand it, is under review with the utility agencies. So where we had, we were not, it wasn't clear in the last year where we would be with regards to cannabis, but the reality is it's still very much in the infancy stages, and not only in terms of licensing, we haven't actually licensed any cannabis establishments. There's no business licenses. And in addition to that, which something we haven't talked about recently, is banking for cannabis proceeds. So there was two parts to the cannabis banking that we had discussed with the financial institutions. One of them is receipt of monies that is not related to proceeds from cannabis sales. So, of course, that first hurdle in receiving monies for the fees for the applications that we're receiving, that was the first hurdle that we had to overcome so that we can make sure that we can move forward with the licensing process. We have not yet moved forward with the discussion of how the proceeds from cannabis will be banked, and so that's something that still needs to be done. But in addition to that, there is currently no lab for cannabis, and that is required by law. So again, there have been quite a few hurdles. Although we are working to try to make sure that we are complying with the law and are not holding up the process for licensing cannabis establishments, there are hurdles that are beyond our control. And so again, you're right, perhaps there has been nothing specific here, but again, those hurdles still need to be addressed.
Okay, so one thing, we did send a FOIA to DRT regarding compliance with under tobacco, or at least non-compliance in the sale of tobacco, vape products. We have yet to see any reports on that. So basically, we haven't seen any conclusive, or we haven't replied regarding, as of 2016, how many businesses authorized to sell tobacco products failed compliance. And basically reports, all reports pursuant to 11 GCA, Chapter 6, Articles,
Yeah.
Article 5.
If I may, my understanding was that our offices were working together to gather the information because the source of the information is Guam Behavioral Health and not the Department of Revenue and Taxation. Although we are involved in the SINAR program, the source information, and we work with them, they actually compile the report that's required, and so please excuse if we had missed that, but my understanding was that our team was working with your team to gather the information from Guam Behavioral Health on that. Okay. Because again, they do the SINAR. The SINAR program falls under them, and we just participate, of course, because we participate because we work with licensing, the licensing area. But please excuse if we missed that, ma'am.
Okay, yeah, DRT is part of that process,
yes.
So we do appreciate your reply. In regards to the Mawar damage, so what was, my understanding there was water damage, some of the documents were ruined. Is that non-compliant with the requirements of DRT to ensure that these documents are maintained and held for a certain amount of time?
In terms of our documents that are to be held permanent, what we did was, and my understanding is we did not get rid of any of the documents that are required to be permanent. Now, of course, we did suffer damages in our building. We actually have two locations. The area where we saw the most damage was at DPW Building B, where we have our vehicle registration branch. That was where we saw the most damage, where water came from both the ceiling and the floor. At our DRT building in Barragata Heights, the area that saw the most damage was there is a storage area that is not actually part of the main building, but it's a single-story kind of a extension to our building. And so that area did lose a roof, but the rest of the building, the water actually came through the floor, or came through the doors and of course, flooded the floor. But again, in terms of the keeping of the records, my understanding for permanent records, we have not gotten rid of any of the permanent records, ma'am.
So as far as damage, though, damaged documents?
And if they are damaged, even if they were damaged, my understanding is for the permanent records, we did not get rid of them.
Okay, are they retrievable? Is the information retrievable, though?
Some of the information may not be legible, again, because they got damaged, but just to share with you, with regards to income tax, we actually scan, we scan our income tax returns. So income tax returns, we have access to digital copies of them. BPT returns, and I'm grateful to the legislature that in the last, I think, 2 legislatures ago, the legislature did actually pass a law that required the online filing of BPT, and that was hugely helpful for many reasons. One, because we probably receive about 15,000 BPT return filings every month, which is about 180,000 BPT filings every year, and we were having to enter those manually. But what has also been helpful is that, of course, because those are entered online, is that at least with regards to BPT, for the current BPT, we didn't have an issue with regards to the files because they're electronic. A couple things that we have been discussing, of course, in the aftermath of Typhoon Mawar, is how we can make sure that we address the issue of securing our records, because we don't want to have issues with any of our documents. And so our intention is to work to obtain scanners and other different types of equipment so that we can digitize. And again, that was part of what we indicated in our outlook. And so those are things that we intend to do so that we can digitize those things that we already have. So for example, for BPT, if we have prior year BPT returns, we want to digitize those so we have them, and so that we're not as at risk for those documents. But again, as we move toward more things being filed online, which, we spoke to it in our budget presentation, for example, online applications for securities licenses, online applications for real estate. As we move to those, again, the risk of the physical documents being damaged is less, and that's where we're headed.
Yes, thank you for making those changes. I mean, that's really critical what you guys are doing. I know you put a lot of work into making things online, and so we thank you for that. But again, there's a lot of room for improvement, and pretty much, we really need to do that. We need to expedite those changes, as particularly when we're looking at a facility, right, that's leaking. Luckily the roof didn't blow off during Mawar, and so this is something we've been discussing for many years, actually. How do we get DRT a home? And, if not a permanent home, a facility that's going to protect very critical documents that you're entrusted with.
Absolutely. And to share with you, and I thank you, Senator Paris, because yes, we have discussed this many years. Both Senator San Agustin and you have actually recommended places for a permanent home for DRT. The governor also, we have talked with her about the possibility of us having a permanent home, and we believe that that's where we need to be heading. At this point, though, the 5-year lease ends this September, so we are in active procurement for an IFB for office space, which, of course, so our first thing is we need to make sure we go through the proper process for procurement for office space, right? That's number one for right now. But our plan really is to have a long-term secure building. And to go back to it, to share kind of some history, back in 2019 when we came on board, our fire alarm, fire suppression system didn't work. We had mold in our building. Our water tank that was supposed to be able to get water out in terms of sprinklers so that we could be safe, that wasn't working. We had to be on fire watch for quite a while. So we had people manually clicking to count the number of people that came into our building. So we do understand that there is an issue with our building, and we do understand that we need to address it. Again, that was something we talked about. I know that in the last couple of years, our focus has been really COVID, but of course, now that we're coming out of COVID, then, again, our desire is to make sure, again, that we do have a permanent home, and that's something that we're looking to.
Okay, do you see that your budget is in need of funding for more IT support? Or do you see that your budget reflects the personnel needed to be dedicated for online systems?
Well, the Office of Technology by law is really the office that provides support for the line, and that was That has not always been that case, but it is at this point. We do have 2 positions in our head count that are for IT support, but again, the majority, when we don't have the support we need, of course, because our team members might be off island, they may be on vacation, or maybe they're out, or maybe we just need additional support for certain projects. It's the Office of Technology that we turn to for those assistance.
Okay, so maybe going back to the question, I know I don't want to belabor the point too much, but I mean, I'm just seeing vacancies throughout the budget, such as your motor carrier administrator, and this is something we've been working on since last term, which is a critical need. And so I'm really concerned about there's vacancies and unfunded vacancies, and these are critical positions, and yet I'm seeing massive hiring within the executive department. Executive office, and I feel like there's a mismatch as far as the budget is concerned, you know, where you're putting your resources, and we know there's a need for more enforcement and more, you know, compliance, and I'm not getting that from this budget.
So also, and thank you, Senator Perez. And you know what, again, to share with you, it has been challenging to try to recruit. And of course, and I thank the legislature, of course, for approving the general pay plan, because that was very hugely important to our team. And also the 18% increase to our LEOs, which happened, you know, before. But when we did sit here at the round table, not the round table, but the oversight hearing for the federal contractors, we talked, where the public auditor was present, he talked about market pay plan. And I am not familiar with market pay plan, but my understanding is that market pay plan will address the issue of what we're having, which is the pay for those technical positions, which, you know, of course, we have been having issues filling. And of course, we've been seeing people leaving too. And so, you know, I wanted to bring that up because, again, you know, although, and I'm not familiar with the market pay plan, but I wanted to bring it up because the public auditor himself has many times said or stated that, you know, there are positions that he believes, and of course that we believe, the technical positions in particular, where it's hard to recruit for. Not only is it hard to recruit for, but we're also amongst agencies where, you know, we've had people leave to the Department of Administration. And then we've also, you know, we have people leave to other agencies, federal agencies, local agencies, then, you know, subsequently leave those agencies to go somewhere else. So there is, I believe, a larger issue with regards to the way that we structure hiring that maybe needs to be addressed. For example, you know, can there be part-time employees? Because, you know what, again, as we look toward hiring, and I am not proposing that be something that we do right now, but as we look at hiring, especially with these this new generation, the desire is different. The desire is not only pay, right? Although pay is important, the desire is flexibility. The desire is some level of being able to telework, right? So. And again, I believe that as we look at trying to hire, you know, we have to hire within the law and within the structure of the law, and which is what we are doing our best to do. But, you know, again, as we discussed, there is a larger picture that needs to be addressed because we're not the only agency that is having challenges hiring. We're not the only government that's having challenges hiring. We're not even probably in the United States the only government. It's, you know, again, it's something that's seen around the world. But I thank you again for your support and for, you know, of course, your continued support of our agency.
Yes, and those things that we definitely need to work on, continue to work on those. Just a question about when were the positions open for the LTAs? When did you open those LTA positions that are listed in the budget?
When did the positions open?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I don't understand that question.
So when did you open them up for hiring?
Perhaps at the point that individuals had their hire date? I'm sorry, I don't understand your question.
So like GG1s, you know, when did you start sending out the documents that you're going to hire these LTAs?
So actually, and thank you for, so we actually have some people who are, just to share with you, when we started in 2019, one thing that we did not do was let go of all of our limited term appointments.
The ones
appointees.
currently in your office. So
Right.
you have a listing in your office. I don't want to name the names, but if you
Sure.
take a look at that,
Okay,
a lot of them, I don't think they were there in previous years.
right.
So
Well,
when were these
we
opened up?
we
What
did.
year?
Sure.
Was that
We-
within this year?
So we did have positions, for example, during COVID, where there was the displaced worker program. We actually picked up from Department of Labor. We actually picked up people from the displaced worker program, the Department of Labor displaced worker program, as employees. And in fact, with regards to that displaced worker program from DOL, my understanding that the whole goal of the displaced worker program was to get people placed in agencies or wherever. So
But the current ones on the list right now, when were they opened up?
perhaps that's something maybe I can have our team pull together so we could provide to you.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And then how many positions are listed open in the DOA website currently for DRT?
Hold on just a second, because when I checked there, and I do have a status, hold on just a second. Oh, well, I'll have to get back to you, but I can give you maybe a status of some of our recruitment if that's helpful. And just to share with you as well, Senator Perez, just because they're showing as open doesn't mean those are the only GG1s for recruitment that have been forwarded to DOA, because there are some GG1s for recruitment that were forwarded to DOA, but for which the position has not yet been announced. And I'm sorry, I'll have to get back to you on the actual positions and that what is in terms of what's showing is open, but let me see. But we do have open, I believe, based on the information I was provided, we have open recruitments or recruitments in progress for about 26 positions.
26 positions currently on the DOA website.
So how it works, just to share, how it works is when we process a GG1 for recruitment, first it has to go to the Bureau of Budget and Management Research to sort of make sure the funding is there. And then after that is approved, then it goes to the Department of Administration for review and also, and I am not entirely sure of the process to get a position posted, but these are, as far as I know, the GG1s for recruitment that have been transmitted, but it doesn't mean that they are all they have all actually been published. And again,
And they
there
have
may
recruitment
be a gap.
packages? They all have recruitment packages?
My understanding is yes, these are active, because I do see that it says open recruitment, yes.
Yeah.
So
Can I get
my
a
understanding-
copy? Can I get a copy of
Sure.
that? Okay, great.
Nope.
All right, yeah, as you know, this has been really, I think it's a key part of DRT's function, operational ability.
Absolutely.
Is the qualified staffing at DRT. And, we've met several times, trying to work together with you as well as GCC to try to get more of a pipeline into DRT. And I think this is really critical now, especially now, with these critical positions. And again, I guess my ask is, take a look at the budget, see how we can redirect some of these resources to the areas of critical need. Because, we're leaking, according to the public auditor, we're leaking taxes. And, just overall, the work environment too. We want to make sure when we talk about recruitment, we want to ensure that the staff there has the support that they need with other employees. So I guess this is where my stance is. So at this point, I don't have any further questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the opportunity.
Thank you, Senator Barris. Senator Tello, my vice chair, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good afternoon to everyone. Our oversight chair for Rev and Tax, she covered a lot of the questions I've had, but some of them, for instance, I'm just going to continue on with the discussion on the open recruitment in progress, department recruitment in progress, and vacant funded partially. I counted 27 positions in the open recruitment process, or progress, it says progress, not process on the,
Right.
yeah, progress. So, I think the department recruitment in progress sounds to me like you're going in-house to try and have those positions filled, right? Is that what that means?
Oh, yes, thank you.
Okay, so that being said, if you're looking at taking somebody in the department and then move them to another position that's open, you still have an empty slot.
Right.
You're still gonna have an
Yes.
empty, someone not there. My question, Daph, if you can, since FY23, when you provided us your budget bill for FY23 and you had these same positions vacant, how many has not been fulfilled?
How many have not been filled? I will have to go back to you because we will have to get back to you, but just to share with you kind of our approach, and this has been an approach that perhaps is not the quickest way to get people into positions, but is the approach that we had taken. When we came in like in 2019, 2020, of course we recognized the fact that there had not been, my understanding was that there had not been promotions for many years for several areas. So what our approach was to try to work to promote from within by announcing the higher level, the 3 and 2 positions or 4 positions or supervisor positions as departmental. So we give the opportunity for our team who has been with the agency to apply. We have, of course, there are a few positions that have been departmental, and then we had to make them open because we either had no applicants or, again, we don't know the reason. People are not applying for them, or we're not able to get them filled. But I would have to get back to you on a count.
Yeah, particularly the money amount is what I'm looking at. And how much have you not spent in FY23 to cover those positions that you requested for in FY23? I do understand the process, what you're doing, especially when you have those that are department opened, because you need the experience, because I noticed the title of these individuals are like, going from 1 to 2 to 3, and you got to have that experience. That's understandable. But you're also leaving vacant that position they leave for, to go to the next one. But if we can get that number to the chair on how much was not fulfilled in FY23, also how much was not fulfilled at FY22. And the reason why I bring that up is because there's still money lingering in the department that it's still floating there. And so we really need to clean up, that money amount and make sure that as we move forward, we're funding with money that's real money and money in real time.
Absolutely.
Real-time money.
I completely understand your issue.
Not like wait
yes.
till an allotment comes in, 3 months down the line to fill something, because that's not going to work. So we need money in real time.
Yes.
It's there. So so that explains the and there's one particular one in the report that provided. It said vacant funded partially funded. So it sounds to me like some of that money is federal money and some of it's general fund money, or is it special fund money and general fund money? How is that
So
possible?
when we put vacant fund partial is because we're not expecting the recruitment to be completed in the beginning of the year. And so what we may have done is we funded partial because we didn't want to hold up the entire amount for that salary and benefits when we know we're not going to spend it.
Okay. What is your prior year obligations so far? I'm looking on this. Is this at $140,000 if I'm not mistaken? So
right.
That being said, if it's prior year FY22 that is owed, how have you exceeded that amount? I'm sorry, let's go back. So the $140,000 is what is anticipated in prior year obligations from FY22 or FY23?
Actually, and in fact, like for example, for the military leave without pay, some of them may go back even to 2012.
Oh, so it goes further.
Yeah, so these are prior. And to share with you, Senator Tadegui, thank you for asking this question, because really, like in this past year, first of all, in 2020, we lost our ASO, our Chief of Administration, actually, who we had for many years. And after that, we We had hired someone, but that individual, I don't even believe they were with us 1 year, and then we ended up having to come toward the end of the last fiscal year, had to try to fill that position perhaps with somebody who could assist us, who had some level of budgetary experience. And so, we actually have some, and of course we have to report to the Speaker, and we do report to the Department of Administration. We've even had some invoices going back to 2016, 2017 that we were still paying in this year. And so we've been really trying to clean up our books. And
Prior
so
years,
we,
yeah.
absolutely, and so we appreciate your comment, and absolutely that's something that's very important to us. We have been talking about that because we want to make sure that we address the issue, because we don't want to have these prior year obligations, because we recognize that it's an issue.
So that being said, in your budget for your medical insurance, did you indicate the same amount of money for your premiums this year as you did for the FY24 budget? Are you seeing that same amount as far as your insurance, health insurance?
I am not sure.
Is it the same amount?
Well, I'm hearing no from our acting ASO. So perhaps no, it's not.
So in other words, you've increased it for FY24? Go ahead, you can bring them up if you want to, to get the answer, because a lot of times when we're here, you don't have the answers, and we'd really like to have it right away.
So we can have him come up. His name is
Sure. Drew, come on. Yeah, just let us know if your budget for your health insurance is the same as FY23 that you put in your budget for FY24, or did you change that and increase it?
Stand by. Don't
Okay.
speak yet. You got to be sworn in. Okay? But I'm just curious, if the question's related to part of the pay of the individual?
The benefit, yeah, so, right, so it's included,
if it's part of it, it's in the budget.
it's in the budget.
So it's already set. So I think that's how you need to answer that, because you can't just change it midstream until everything is settled.
Right, right. We don't, right, of course, because we don't know what the next year's premium
Premium,
amount is going to
right.
be.
Okay.
So it is the same?
Stand by.
Oh.
Sergeant Arm, I need you to swear in the gentleman.
Oh, okay.
All right, so it's based on,
We're going to have the gentleman sworn in first, Daphne. Ms. Simzu, hold on. Stand up and have him sworn in first.
Please raise your right hand. Under penalty of perjury, do you affirm that any and all information you provide today, whether it be verbally, electronically, and in writing, be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Yes. Chair is under oath. You may proceed.
Okay. Thank you, Mikhail. Go ahead. Maybe you can answer that directly with Senator Tideway.
Yeah, thank you. Your name is, please state your name for the record and.
Afterday, Senator Typhoon.
Closer to the mic. Closer to the mic.
Yes, my name is Mikhail Spiritu, and I am the current acting ASO. Yes, so the amount that we got for FY24 projected was the ceiling amount we received from BBMR.
I'm sorry, perhaps it's best if,
Okay, so Miguel, may I make a recommendation? Is the health insurance premiums that were put in the budget for FY23, this year's budget, all you have to do is just check out the FY24 budget that was submitted to the chair and see if those numbers are the same. The reason why I bring this up is because if there's been shortfalls, it's always been insurance premiums. We saw that last year, a huge amount of shortfall in premiums. It was fortunate that the governor found some funding, to cover those shortfalls in certain agencies and departments. That's because we were very, heavily armed with federal monies that, it was easy for us to come up with ways to cover shortfalls when it came to health insurance premiums, because you just, moved one general fund money to that and then used federal money for something else. But we're not going to have that luxury anymore. As we move forward, we will not have that. It stopped raining federal funds. So the health insurance premiums are anticipated to go up. So it's just keeping that in mind as you move forward. You know, I know that you have reserves that are set aside, about 10% of reserves are set aside for rev and tax, or is rev and tax exempt from that, from BBMR?
No, we do have some reserves, but already I think outside of what's left over for the next several pay periods, all of the reserves have been released, I believe.
Okay, so there's nothing left in the reserves? Yeah.
My understanding is it's only whatever is left over in reserves is really just for the next several pay periods through the end of the fiscal year.
Okay. The other question I had was, I noticed in contractual services, and I'm seeing, you know, a pattern here from FY22 to 23 and now 24, and we're looking at an increase of close to $200,000 every year in contractual services. Why is that?
Well, the largest contract that we do have is for our DMR, which actually is for the majority of our systems that we utilize at our agency. I'm not sure if it was in the last year or the year before where we did actually complete the RFP for the services. So we did in the last couple of years work on that. But I think maybe the deputy might be able to share maybe why we have an increase in the contracts, because we did have
Contractual services. Yeah. We're just seeing a pattern here of almost 200,000 every year in contractual services. And I just wanted to pinpoint what is that particular service that's requiring that increase?
Well, my understanding is that this year as well, what was included was also, I believe, for the procurement for the tobacco stamps. So if you're considering the increase from last year to this year, a portion of that was for tobacco stamp procurement, is my understanding.
Yeah. So, yeah, that amount was, I believe, $70,000.
Yeah. And is there a breakdown on contractual service in your budget bill that you provided us? I mean, it was extensive, but, you know, to break down that 600...
It's about 2 point...
Yeah, the 1.3, no, I'm sorry, the 629,000, if there was a breakdown, is that included in your budget bill? That breakdown?
629?
Yeah. Yeah, this sheet.
Look at this
I
sheet.
see.
This sheet is what you look at.
Sorry, I don't
This
have
is the overall breakdown from OFB.
So I was just wondering if you guys have an itemized breakdown for this amount, for the FY24, the 629,487 that's under your contractual services. If you don't, then Daph, can I kindly get that breakdown?
Right,
Okay.
we'll get that for you.
I appreciate that. There was discussion about the attorney. I was glad the oversight chair was talking about the territorial income tax attorney, because I had questions on that. It was my answer, or the questions I had was answered, except the one when the question was, you have 2 attorneys in this department, but I believe the question is, Daph, I understand the history, you gave us the history, but why do we need 2 attorneys? Why not just the one individual attorney?
Sure. So, and perhaps also the deputy director may have some comment, but with regards to the level of work that's involved, I believe that maybe even 2 may not even be sufficient. And the reason is because we have lots of cases, again, to include some of the cases that have come over from the Office of Attorney General. Also, again, you know, we are a regulatory agency. We have 21 branches, and there are several things that we have in terms of whether it's administration or in terms of regulatory, the area of regulation we are in need of assistance with. And so our attorneys have been assisting us with those items.
Okay, so, and you say attorneys, so you have 1 territorial by law. You know, it's actually was in 2018, if I'm not mistaken, a letter went out from John Camacho, then the director at the time, looking for a territorial attorney. That was then filled. However, there's nothing in the law requiring for a second attorney. Why doesn't anybody have, like, you know, a paralegal or somebody else to fill that instead? And by the way, before I move on, how much are we paying the territorial attorney yearly?
I believe Hold on, it's in our staffing.
Yeah,
plan.
as she's looking for that, I just kind of wanted to chime in. So, you know, in the law for the principal Guam territorial income tax attorney, it does, so it's not just tax matters as mentioned earlier. So that office is to provide assistance and represent the Director of the Revenue and Taxation regarding all legal matters in which the department is interested, including tax, regulatory, licensing issues, and personnel matters, and all other legal matters within the director's purview, of course with some exceptions, right? Some of which are to be handled by the Office of the Attorney General. So it's not just, you know...
So you
it's
still
not
have
just tax
access,
time.
right, to the Attorney General's office if you need assistance from them?
For certain
things. So
yeah.
you, not only do you have a territorial attorney, but you also have access to utilize the Attorney General's office as certain circumstances happen. So why do you need the second attorney?
So as I mentioned, actually there are cases that have been transferred over to our agency, the active cases that were being handled by the AG's office, but because we actually have our attorneys in-house, those have been transferred to us so that our attorneys can work on them. So we're actually, with regards to those cases where there has been a substitution of counsel, the AG's office is no longer the counsel of record, but it's our internal attorneys that are the counsel of record. So they actually work on those items.
I see. So what is the price? I mean, how much are we paying the territorial attorney?
So the principal territorial income tax attorney, what I have in our fiscal year 22-24 staffing pattern, salary is 126,409.
126,000.
409.
49. And how much are you paying the assistant? His.
So there's an attorney 3 that is, an attorney 4, which is a classified position, and that's 105,373.
So you have an attorney that's a classified and an attorney that's non-classified.
Yes.
And they're not out of the Attorney General's office, but out of your direct. Okay.
Correct.
So close to $300,000 is being
Yes.
spent on attorneys,
And
that's not accounting. That's not counting the assistant attorney, the attorney that's assisting the territorial attorney, right?
So the 105 plus the 126, that's the salary for the 2 attorneys. But
But Daph, before you go there, but not counting that second attorney. You just spoke about it.
Those are the 2. Those are 2.
So Rev Tax only has 2 attorneys.
We have 2 attorneys right now, but we actually have an open recruitment for a 3rd attorney.
You're recruiting for a 3rd, and what
Yes.
is the cost for that recruitment?
We-
And is it funded in this budget bill?
It is funded and
How much is that?
92,608.
19. Okay. Okay, I'm not going to belittle, I'll just move on.
Yeah,
Okay,
right.
just trying to find out how many attorneys you have there, and you still have access still to the Attorney General's office to utilize them. If you can just bear with me increasing. Okay, so this should be my last question. I was contacted by a constituent, and it was regarding a change in the rules at Rev Tax. And I do believe in cleaning up things. I was one of those authors that created legislation to, with Speaker B.J. Cruz with the OPA's office to get rid of some of those accounts that have been dormant since 19forgotten. So, and this one constituent called me to say that when they went there, his business license had expired. It had been over a year. But they were told, and this is something new because usually if it's expired for longer than, whenever expiration, there's a fine, a fee that you have to pay, right, to get it back on good grace and standing. But now they're saying that when you go to Rev Tax, if you did not renew your business license within 1 year and 1 day, Rev Tax is going to basically, kill your license. It no longer exists. And if you want a business license, you have to go through the whole process again to get a business license. So I have 2 questions. One, is that true? Secondly, if it is, then how did Rev Tax create that new change to your rules and regs without going through the AAA process? Okay.
To answer, I Perhaps that's not entirely true.
Okay.
So we do have a internal policy that require that. So historically, and if you look at our database, what ends up happening when people don't come in and cancel is we have these business licenses that they end up almost being in our system, infinitely. And so, yes, when there is an issue with when a business license is expired and is not renewed after a year and a day, we do in our system what's called a forced cancel. And I do need to confirm with our business license supervisor of the exact process, but my understanding is that if there is a need for that particular business license or application to go through certain review process, then we at that point advise the applicant that they may need to go back and go through the process again. But I would have to go back to my business license supervisor just to confirm the exact process. But there is what is called we have in our system, it's called a forced cancellation. But again, it does not mean that across the board in every single case that an organization or an application is going to be required to go through the entire business license process. But I will have to again confirm the exact process with our team.
Daph, I understand the importance of, cleaning the books. It makes sense. However, what happens here is that if you kill that business license and it ends, right? Versus in the past, I've known people who've actually forgot to renew their license, and it was like 2 years later from their expiration date. And then when they went down there, they were given a fine for not renewing it, like $1,500, to put their license back in good standing. Of course, do all the GRTs, if there is GRTs being spent, but, in good standing. So Rev and Tax stood to make $1,500 from that person being late. Versus if this is true to form, because I had a constituent actually come to me to tell me, that they would not renew the license because it had expired 1 year and 1 day, it ends it, and it has to go through the whole process again. So now what would have been charged to this person for $1,500 for Rev and Tax to put in their pocket is only going to now be charged $50 because that's how much it costs for a brand new business license. However, the biggest problem here that I see is the name on that business license. Many people want to keep their name. So if I had a company called Telephoto and then one day, let's say a year and a half it expired, I went there and I have to go through it all again. How do I get that name back to start again? So
perhaps, and it's hard to speak to that issue because I don't know exactly the situation. Okay. And sometimes the devil is really in the details. You may ask a question, and it seems kind of like a general question, but really it's probably important for us to understand the specifics of that particular business license and what occurred. Which resulted in the individual being advised as they were. So if you could maybe provide the information for the taxpayer or the applicant,
absolutely.
Then that way we could look into it. That would probably be helpful because it's difficult for me to advise on that without.
No, Daphne,
again, I don't want to advise generally and then it's not
right.
Not
If this is true to form and this supervisor did say that to a constituent, if it is true, how does Rev and Tax go ahead and make these changes without going through a certain process, like a AAA process, or does Rev and Tax actually have the authority to change rules at Rev and Tax?
So is the question, or is the assumption that the rule is that if a business license is expired, that it must be given the opportunity to, or the individual must be given the opportunity to pay the $1 a day without having to go through the whole process? Because I'm not sure that that's exactly correct, but I would again have to confirm it. So
Okay.
again, that's
I appreciate
the,
that.
the thing is, I don't know that that's exactly true,
Okay.
but I would have to confirm that.
Yeah, this is a big deal because, you know, this is one constituent who just gave me a call the other day. And if this is the case, you know how many businesses who forget to, you know, renew their business license, and then now we're going to get
But-
bombarded with. I'm sorry, I don't know if Mr. Chair has gotten any calls yet, but we're going to start getting calls, and this just happened yesterday.
Well, we instituted that in 2021, so that's something, again, that was more of an in-house way of
In-house.
us making
Oh,
it sure.
okay,
But again,
In-house.
it's not something that just happened like this year.
Okay.
So it would be important perhaps for that particular applicant for us to get their information so we could see how we could help them.
Okay, well, thank you so much for that. I'm looking forward to hearing your answer and you talking to your supervisor so we can get to the bottom of this. And if it's an in-house thing, I think there should be some kind of process to notify the public. You know, that's why the AAA process is put into place, so people are well aware. It gives them enough a chance to adjust to the new laws or the new regulations, especially when it comes to businesses. You know, we don't want to deter any of these businesses away or, you know, saying, well, I'm done with Guam. You know, they keep changing the rules on me. You know, I'm out of here. You know, we don't want that happen. So,
Absolutely. And thank you, Senator. I really appreciate that comment.
Okay, we'll talk after the hearing. But again, thank you, Mr. Chair, for the opportunity.
Thank you, Senator Tyree. But I definitely, I think it needs to be also mentioned that if you own the business and it expired a year later, and you come in to renew it, your name is not gone. Because I know for a fact, business license, if you came in and you said your Telos photo shop, for example, they'll ask, what was the name you wanted? And then you said the name, they'll say,
Yeah.
let's pull it up in the system to find out if anybody grabbed it. And if they say, well, I'm sorry, but there's a Telo Taitagui that's got that name. And then you say, I'm Telo Taitagui. They'll say, then it's yours. Nobody is, because there's no name protected unless it's copyright or whatever. There's all kinds of protection. But I just wanted to make sure that
Right.
you had mentioned that because there is a process, I know for a fact in business license that
Yeah.
it's not free for all. And I know
Right.
that when I was in the compliance, we advised all the business, hey, make sure you renew or else you get charged $1. Now it's up to you. You can cancel and forget it and start new. See, that there's avenues to escape all the penalties. And it's always left to that avenue for the person to,
Right, but that's of course not the intention. That's not what we, would like to happen, because if there is a taxpayer or a business license applicant who is in need of making sure that, or we are in need of making sure that they get clearance, we don't want them to just cancel one and then apply for another one to avoid the penalty, right? That's not
Exactly.
that's not the intention, and that's not what that's actually not at all why this
Okay.
exists.
all right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Speaker Therese, do you have any questions or comments for the panel?
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Director and Deputy Director. If I could just start with the LTAs as well. So it's just noticeable that in the Director's office, the LTAs have compared 23 versus 24. They've increased. And these are specifically for collection agents, what's called collection agents. And I looked through the other, I just see very few collection agency agents in any other division. And I just wanted to know, what exactly do those do? You have about, there were 21 in FY23 in the director's office, LTAs, and now you're projecting 33 for FY24 in the director's office alone, LTAs, collection agents.
So with regards to collection agents, they may actually be utilized for many different areas. Some of the individuals that I'm looking at the list that we have in our FY 2024 agency staffing pattern. Some of the individuals are in EDP, some are in central files, some are in income tax and processing, some are in driver's license, some may be part of our customer service or our customer call center.
Director, are you saying that from your office they're detailed to those areas? Because they're under your office in the budget.
Correct. So they although again, and I was, as I was trying to explain earlier, and thank you for helping me with that, is that although they're showing again under executive direction, they're actually not all on the second floor physically with the director's office. They're actually out doing the work in the different branches.
Okay. There's 33 of them, LTAs. I just feel, you know, LTAs, they serve a purpose when we need something in a hurry, and maybe, like I thought, you guys hire LTAs in tax season, or tax filing season, right? That's when you have a mad rush, or when there's like an extra program, and then you need, like during the rise or different things that where you might need extra help for a temporary period. But these look like this has been going on for quite a while, and we always try to support you, to give you more, because we want you to permanently staff through the
Yes.
merit system, you know, those people who we really need, real tax collectors.
Absolutely.
You know, those people.
Yes, thank you, and thank you, Speaker, and we absolutely agree with you. You know, the idea behind an LTA is not that they're here at our agency permanently, and in fact, as I mentioned, we did have somebody who retired after 20 years as an LTA just this year. So that's not the intention, and it's our intention to transition so that way, as we have LTAs leave, wherever possible, we, instead of using that to fund another LTA, we fund a vacant funded, and also that as we move forward, that we continue to reduce the number of LTAs that we have. But as I mentioned earlier, we really are short in all of our branches. It has been challenging for our team as we've worked to try to, as you know, and recruiting is not easy. You know, we did have an oversight hearing on our the 2 OPA reports for federal contractors, also for tobacco stamps, and I think the resounding theme, and it's, you know, it's we are short. We're short in BPT, we're short in exam, and we continue to lose people either through, again, we lost actually a couple of people, one person who passed away in income tax, one person who passed away in BPT just 2 months ago, someone who passed away just this past weekend. But we also have people who have left our agency to go to other agencies.
Yeah, but that happens with everybody. Every agency has this issue.
Yes.
But my question to you is, do you have, are you funding those positions for classified personnel to recruit, or are you funding only these LTAs for temporary? My issue is just, if you've got people who had to go through the merit system for hire and who have to comply with the merit system for everything they do, and are getting paid, in some cases, less than the LTAs, I find that to be an issue, right? And and it hasn't decreased. Daphne, I'm a director, I'm afraid it increased since last year, or your proposal is to increase it. So that's why I'm bringing that up. And I understand you're saying you're short. I want to help you with your shortage, but it has to be, and you're able to fill the LTA positions. So your argument that they're, you know, oh, these are the young people, they don't want to be hired this way. No, they're being hired in LTA positions. We're filling 33 in your office, not even the other divisions. So I'm just saying, there must be people willing to work in classified positions, and
I understand, and
those.
actually you bring up a great point, which is exactly one of the issues that we run into with regards to our LTAs, and the reason why that it's hard to have people go from, or even for them, it's not desirable for them to apply for some positions, because if they apply for it, they may, although again, what we have done is we've met with our LTAs to share with them the benefits of becoming classified. The realities are, at the levels of pay, a lot of individuals are really working from paycheck to paycheck. And the long-term goal of becoming classified versus the immediate, my need for the actual paycheck, that there's that disconnect. And so again, we have advised that the intention is to move in that direction, but that is part of the reason why people are not actually applying for the classified positions, because the pay is less than how much they would be paid as an LTA.
All right, well, I would just think that this is going to contribute to morale issues, for classified employees. All right, I want to move on. So I know you said that real property tax appraisals is not funded in this budget. It's required by law to be done every 5 years, but it's not planned for the upcoming fiscal year, 2024.
It is actually in the executive budget in a separate section.
Oh.
And if I may, I just wanted to, at this point, since we're discussing that, I know in the executive budget, it actually calls it the triennial revaluation, but it is a quinquennial, so I don't want there to be an issue should the Budget Act pass and that language not be changed.
We can change, that's not an issue.
To make it a revaluation.
Are you prepared to do this?
So that's something that we're going to have to undertake. Our team has been, we're going to be doing it. We're going to be working on it. Our team actually has already pulled up the prior RFP language from 2014 when it was
Okay.
last done, and we're going to move forward with trying to get this executed, yes.
What is the cost, do you know? That's estimated?
My understanding was that back in 2014, I believe it was in excess of 1.5.
What's appropriated according to the budget bill?
In the budget bill, I don't know that
I'll
there's a
look it up.
specific
Thanks,
figure,
okay.
ma'am.
All right, what about the provision for tax refunds in the FY23 budget bill? When we were passing that budget, you came in the committee of the whole, and we talked about whether that provision would be enough. What is, and you've been doing a great job paying out the tax refunds, so I want to thank you for that. Is the provision, the set aside, sufficient?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand your question.
Oh, in the budget, we line item the provision for tax refunds, so we can estimate the amount. And we had a debate because I think you pay out every year more than what we actually estimate, or you owe more than what we were estimating. And so I'm asking you if the estimate for FY23 was sufficient.
I will have to get back to you,
Okay.
Madam Speaker.
All right, I appreciate that.
And to go back to it on the real property revaluation on page 50, section 70 of the executive budget, the language states, I Magaʹhågan Guåhan is hereby authorized to expend such funds necessary to procure the services for the real property tax triennial revaluation. So that's what it states in the executive
All
budget.
right. And you gave us a quote from the previous...
But I believe it was in excess of 1.5 million. That was back in 2014.
2014, 1.5 million. Okay, thanks.
Yes.
And that's, we don't have an amount for that 1.5 million. And then, DOA is proposing, or I'm not sure where they are in this process, to get a new system. Is that supposed to interact with your system or not?
You know what, I am not entirely sure of the scope of work for, that Performa has with regards to the FMIS for DOA. What I can say is we did meet with Performa early on in, I guess when they were just awarded and they came to Guam several months ago, but I can't speak to the scope of work for the FMIS system. But ideally it should interface because the source data for all payments for the general fund and for all of the special revenue funds that come into our agency, which is a good amount of them, comes from our system. So ideally, yes, the system should interface or there should be some connection, but I couldn't speak to the scope of that because that's not a project that I oversee.
Is there some problem that you are facing now without the interfacing systems? Because my concern is, you're talking about interfacing our tax records, which are very protected, controlled. I don't think everybody in the government is supposed to have access to those. I think previous directors wouldn't even allow OPA access to those. So I just want to be sure that we're not, allowing something that's not actually allowed by law, or do you need legislative authorization to do something like that?
Thank you. But as it stands, our current system, there is data that goes into, there has to be data that goes into the DOA system in order for them to be able to do a bank reconciliation so they'll know how much deposits are every day. I can't
Sure.
speak to what data that is that they do have on the DOA system, but if they don't, but the only way that they're able to have it is because there is already some level of an interface, Speaker,
The
Madam
level
Speaker.
of banking interfacing is one thing,
Yes,
right? So you're
absolutely.
talking about deposit levels.
Yes,
of
absolutely.
course.
Yes.
But what about,
That's what I'm speaking to in terms of the need for some type of
Okay.
interface. Yeah, I'm not speaking, or I wasn't recommending or suggesting that there needs to be a larger interface so that there's access, because in fact, our job is to make sure we secure and
Yes.
safeguard people's information. So if there was any level of interface with the new system, it would really have to be at the level that it likely currently is, which is, again, so that they can have the information they need for deposits,
all right.
bank
Would
reconciliations.
you please let us know if you see the scope of work and it exceeds that in any way?
Right, I'm not familiar with the scope of work for that project.
Yeah, all right, if you see it. And the insurance commissioner, you have one, right?
Yes.
But on the staff, where is that in the staffing pattern?
It's in regulatory.
Okay, because the deputy, no, it's called,
Yeah, so insurance, securities, banking, and real estate is part of our regulatory division.
okay. All right, and then you have a vacant deputy tax commissioner,
Correct.
but that's funded.
So our deputy tax commissioner, who was with us for many decades maybe, he retired last year.
Okay.
And so we're hoping to fund that. That's a very critical position, in fact, and we are hoping to fund it so that we can hire for that position very soon.
Do you, as director, have oversight of the insurance and banking commissioner?
So we do have an organizational chart, and our organizational chart, in terms of the way that it's structured, we have not changed it. So the way that, and you'll see the organizational chart there, but definitely it's clear from the law that the insurance and banking fund really should be managed by the insurance and banking commissioner. So that's, but in terms of the insurance and banking group, the insurance and banking commissioner actually manages the insurance and banking functions, and
Okay.
yeah, that's something that I don't
I had sent a
get
letter
involved in.
in 2022 regarding, there's a law that requires malpractice insurance carriers to file with a report of final judgments, and they have not been doing this, filing this with the Guam Medical Licensing Board. So I had asked the tax commissioner, or the insurance commissioner's assistance in
Okay.
enforcement of this, the malpractice insurance carriers reports. Yeah, I'm just going to raise that here on the record. Maybe you can take that back and discuss that with them, if that's possible.
Yes, ma'am.
So the 22% raises are covered in your estimated budget already, right? That's what the governor
Yes.
said. And are any tobacco, or tobacco stamp law, or is any of that funded going forward, like implementation?
So the amount for the startup is included in the contracting for the FY 2024 ask, but we don't have anything beyond the startup. And that was one of the issues that I had raised back in when we had several hearings on the subject.
And what would the startup cover?
The startup would cover, and I'm sorry, I don't have that with me. Let me see. It would cover the purchase of stamps, the stamps which we would actually have the wholesalers purchase from us, in addition to, and I'm sorry, let me see. I believe it's primarily the stamps, ma'am.
All right, I thought the AG's office said they were going to fund the stamps.
So what happened was they did say that they were going to do that, and then we were told last fiscal year that we lost the funding for that.
Last fiscal years when
I
they
think
said
it
they
was
would
found.
give that. Okay. So, all right. That,
Yeah.
That's unfortunate, and I think we should have a separate hearing regarding this tax stamps because
Okay.
I'm not satisfied with.
So just to
It's
let you know,
changing, it
though, it's
changes
an
almost,
active procurement.
Pardon?
It is an active procurement, the IFB for the stamps.
To purchase the stamps?
Yes.
All right. All right, and then back to the attorneys, it's been brought up several times, but I want to clarify. So when you submitted your budget for FY23, there was not a proposal to hire 3 attorneys in there. I'm not sure how that happened when that was not part of the FY23 budget proposal. It wasn't listed in the staffing pattern at that time. It's now listed in the staffing pattern, not just the tax attorney, but an attorney for, you're saying classified? That was not in the staffing pattern at all. I'm not sure. How did you get a classified
I believe that,
position there when that wasn't in the FY23? It looks like you already hired these people. That's what I'm asking about.
yes, we did hire them already.
So-
My understanding is that the assistants to the principal territorial income tax attorney, which the assistant attorneys are allowed by law and to be classified, and we did a lateral transfer for our classified position.
Say that again?
We-
The last part?
A lateral transfer. A lateral
A
transfer.
lateral transfer?
Yes.
From where?
From the AG's office to our office in 2022.
What law allows that?
I believe that the principal territorial income tax.
No, I know that law. There's a law that,
Right.
that allows you and has allowed for years the hiring of a
Yes.
principal Guam
Yep.
territorial income tax
Yes.
attorney. It
Right.
was not, however, put into, and that's supposed to be an unclassified lawyer,
Yes.
but it was not put into your staffing pattern for an FY23. So my first
Right.
question is, how then did you hire that person if it wasn't in your staffing pattern for an FY23? Second of all, this same law allows the hiring of assistants.
Right.
Oh, you're right. It says the director shall appoint as members of the classified service such assistants. Okay. So now you've got 3 attorneys after having none, working with the AG's office for all those years. And I remember having meetings with the AG's office and this is the prior AG, of course, and where I was told everything was fine, that you had a good relationship, that they were prosecuting the cases that you referred to them, and in fact, some of these attorneys might be the people I talked to during those meetings. So I'm very, very surprised by that.
Might I, with regards to the AG's office, and of
So
course
why is there, if there, sorry,
Sure.
go ahead, yeah.
I was going to say, even though, just to share with you, even though we did have the AG's office representing us in cases, even with the prior AG, and we did have a good relationship with him, and I believe I have a good relationship with the current Attorney General. Even though we did have that in place, we were still actively looking to find someone for internally. And although, again, we did still have the support of the AG's office, there is value to having the internal, and again, we were just unsuccessful over the last 4 years in obtaining that, and so
Over
we
the
have
last
been.
4 years,
Yeah.
were you trying to hire a tax attorney?
Yeah, we were trying
So
to
have you
hire.
hired a tax attorney?
We hired for the principal territorial income
No, but
tax attorney.
is any of these a tax attorney?
Although they're not tax attorneys per se, just to share as well, even our representation from the AG's office wasn't specifically from tax attorneys. And it is very difficult to recruit for a tax attorney. And in fact, I think as we talk about tax attorneys, we talk about people who have certain credentials like an LLM in tax, which maybe there's 4 on Guam that I am aware of.
Yes.
So it is very challenging. So again, you know, even the representation that we were receiving from the AG's office wasn't from an actual tax attorney.
That's right, but that's not the one per statute that says tax attorney.
Correct. And you know what, with regards to that, I think that and I'm not sure why it was named that, but what is allowed in law with regards to what the Principal Territorial Tax Attorney's Office can actually get involved in terms, it is not limited to tax, although
Yes,
it's called that.
I know that. I want to ask you about that as well. So you're saying that our review of these staffing patterns is not really, I don't know, if it doesn't mean much, if we are able to hire above and beyond the staffing patterns that you are submitting to us in your FY24 budget requests?
My understanding of the way that the budget works, and if it's not correct, then I will absolutely do my best to work to correct it. But my understanding is that it's not line item budget, and that also in terms of it not being line item budget, that even within the staffing pattern, that it's possible, as long as we are not exceeding what was allowed in terms of funding, to try to shift so that way we could hire where we need. So that's my understanding.
All right. So I would like to ask you where those shifts came from based on the last, but I'm going to skip that question for now. I'd just like to go to the law requires that these, if you hire a Guam territorial income tax attorney, that they are going to assist the director to administer and enforce the territorial income tax, represent the governor in all civil actions. Are there any civil actions pending?
Yes, we do have civil litigation cases that were formally transferred by issuance of substitution of counsel for our legal counsel.
All right. In your last, in the FY23 submission, you estimated that there are a number of cases, 700 at that time. That was still supposed to be done by the AG's office. I don't know. It says, well, that's number. I'm not sure which ones here you describe, but they talk about the number of cases from FY22, FY23 being the same. And then FY24's estimate looks to me the same. When you look at maybe 100 more cases closed for deficiencies, but I don't think those are necessarily court cases. So how many pending court cases would you say that you only estimated? Well, you estimated 4 criminal cases.
I would have to get back to you on the number of cases.
All right. So in FY22, 21, 22, 23, and 24, they estimated 30 full-scale criminal investigations and 4 to be referred for prosecution. So that's 4 per year. Looks like the same in FY24. So it's just curious because there's 3 lawyers now concentrating on this. And do you expect additional collections because of these 3 lawyers in your office that you were not able to achieve when they were over at the Attorney General's office? Because a lot of these are the same attorneys who came from the Attorney General's office.
Okay. So your question is, do we expect additional collections? And so, again, the role of the attorneys is quite vast. And to be perfectly honest, I believe that, if we were, for example, just as a comparative, to hire perhaps an outside counsel, that the outside counsel, and we are not autonomous, so we are not able to hire outside counsel, would cost well above what we're able to, well above the hourly rate that we would be paying, that we're paying to our current attorneys, right? And so again, I believe that there's value in the attorney, in the
I know, but I'm asking if you have an estimate in additional collections. Sometimes every year, the directors come in with estimates and collections. If we get this many employees, we can increase collections by this much. So I'm wondering if there was that kind of analysis done for the bringing in 3 lawyers, which were being paid by the AG's office. right? Okay, what about, so the other duties of those attorneys are criminal action, of course, civil actions, criminal actions, and I was asking you if there are any more criminal actions expected over the 4 that you've calculated for the last 4 years?
I can't say at this time.
Okay, and then represent the director in court and administrative proceedings, protect the rights and property of the government of Guam in matters under the director's purview, perform such other tasks as the director of revenue and tax assigns to him, and then nothing prevents them from assisting and representing regarding all legal matters in which the department is interested, including tax, regulatory, licensing issues, and personnel matters, and all other legal matters. I'm asking a lot of questions. Of course, normally we want you to have legal advice, but it was just my understanding that it was working out well, so this is a surprise. The second is, every agency wants a lawyer assigned and sitting at their side. Every director wants that. We are not able to provide that. There's a shortage at the AG's office. They are not able to provide that. They're sharing lawyers, and so I just want to make sure, when we're doing, now that you're describing lateral transfers, you know, even that, I want to look at that. I'm not sure how that works, but, I mean, I've heard of that for other positions, right? Anyway, so yeah, so I wanted to know, do we have, is there anything,
I don't have
and
an
also one more thing, yeah. So the law says unclassified, and for the tax attorney, you could hire a classified assistant for the tax attorney, and then you hired another unclassified lawyer. Is that another assistant?
No, so there were initially 2 classified attorneys assistants, but then one of them resigned, and so then there was the one left.
All right, and you had those in your staffing patterns, even though those weren't in the staffing patterns submitted to us. You're saying that those positions existed at Rev and Tax?
Meaning, do you mean have they? I don't understand.
I thought we get a list of all the positions that exist at Rev and Tax, and then that's why they say vacant funded or vacant unfunded. And if they were not going to be funded, they would show vacant unfunded, but we would still know every single position. Is that correct, Mr. Chair? Yeah, so I'm just saying in 23, that was not at all in the staffing pattern, not even vacant unfunded with, you know, which signals that you might fill it or try to, but none of that.
Yeah.
It doesn't even show as part of a staffing pattern.
And again, to go back to kind of the history, back in FY 2019 budget, there was, I believe, $300,000 that was allocated to DRT for that purpose.
I think I did that. That's
and then
correct.
Because of recruitment issues and because we
Yes.
couldn't find somebody, then the next year it became 150, and then I think the next year, because again, it was just.
And I think in that year, we allowed hiring of a non-tax attorney, right, with that money. That's why I'm asking about these positions as they are, you know, written up
I'm
formally.
sorry. When I didn't understand that portion. With regards to the 300 and the 150, the budget was your, did you,
I think,
the authorization was for non-tax attorneys?
I'm not sure, but I remember, I think I'm the one who sponsored that floor amendment, and that was
Right.
before your time, is that correct?
Yes. But what I can say, though, is that even back in, it has to be pre-COVID, there was an effort for us to try to move forward with getting an RFP for attorney services. And my understanding is, and of course this was in communication with the AG's office at that time, is that because we're a line, we cannot do that legally. And so that's why we couldn't move forward. And that's why we kept kind of just trying to hire for the principal territorial income tax attorney. Yeah, so I don't believe that we can legally do the hiring as a contract for an RFP, again, because we did attempt to, and when we tried to, when we began discussions with the AG's office, it wasn't able to move through.
All right. There was a program established by Public Law 35-32. It was an exceptions process where the fees would be waived for people who, we were trying to help those who were homeless, those who, and youth especially, in order to get IDs. Does that program, how is it running, may I ask? Is it?
We actually, from the time that it was required to be implemented, we implemented it. And we actually work with the Office of Homeless, OHAP, and there is a designated time and day, I believe, during the week that they're able to have clients come to our office so we can provide services.
Okay, great. So do we, in addition to, if you raise the real property taxes, of course, we will see higher revenue because of that.
Correct.
If you, do you expect higher revenue for any other, as a result of any other, like, strategy of the Department of Revenue and Taxation for the upcoming year?
Well, I mean, of course, you know, areas that we, which we indicated in our outlook is strengthening enforcement. Something of, you know, again, we did have the oversight hearing for the public auditor's report regarding federal military contractors, right? And we do have a deadline to respond to certain of his comments. Although I think fundamentally we do not agree that the amount is the amount that was indicated, which is the 24 million over 5 years. And we believe it's like more than, like probably, and you can't even confirm 1.5 over 5 years, which is like 300,000 a year. Again, our team well, first of all, we do have a shortage in our exam group already, and we've lost quite a few people in that group. We have to work to continue to try to recruit for those positions, but in the midst of it all, we have been discussing internally strengthening our enforcement efforts to include through training. What we were hoping was that we could recruit people so that by the time the IRS came to Guam to train, we would have new people to train. But unfortunately, what's happening is we actually continue to lose people, so we're just going to, our intent is just to move forward with the training, even with the people that we do have.
All right, yeah, that's, I guess, one, you know, why I'm asking about these other positions and the attorneys, because
absolutely.
There's other divisions where we think that's where the regulatory, you know, or the increased collections might come from. That's not where we're seeing the additional personnel. Okay. All right, but thank you. I want to praise you for your prompt tax refund payments. I think you guys have done a great job of that, and I want to praise you for information that goes out to the public, especially look after the typhoon. You're one of the few agencies that went out and gave out your own independent information regarding, you know, your offices, what's operational, what's not, what to do in case, and I think that's exactly what the public needs, so I want to thank you for that. And you've been doing that ever since COVID. I think you're definitely still, you know, one of these directors who I want to point to that's the example that should be set for the rest, right? That get your information out, get it out independently, get it out quick, and be customer service oriented when you do that, as opposed to, you know, they don't need to know about everything. They need to know how it affects them, where do they go, how quickly can they do that. And so I want to thank you for that. And for your work, of course, the typhoon put a lot of additional work on top of what work you had because of COVID and everything else. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And if I may, you know what, on Memorial Day, which was the day, the Monday right after the typhoon, I just want to just say thank you to my team, because we actually had happy labor, not only on the Monday, but even through the weekend. And so my team wanted to make sure that we opened up on the Tuesday right after the storm, and we did our best to make sure that we do that. So I just, again, need to recognize my team, because really at the end of the day, I thank you, Senator, but really the reality is it's our team that's really been so very, been doing all the work. So I just wanted to make sure I share that.
Yes, please extend our thanks to your team for all of the work. You know, as the oversight chair says, yeah, we can still improve, and that's why our questions, and but there have been improvements. So, Sizos Masi. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Senator Brown, do you have any questions for the panel or comments?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Certainly welcome to Rev and Tax. I know the Speaker and certainly Senator Tello had raised the issue about the attorneys. I'm not going to belabor it, but I think we're just noting the concern. We are aware of the exodus that happened earlier this year with the Attorney General's office, and we just found it convenient how a number of these attorneys seem to find places in the government of Guam quite quickly to be hired. So we do take note of that concern. I did want to ask one question related to the attorneys. I mean, do any of them specialize in tax? Do they have any training in their background to be a tax attorney?
No, but what we have done is connect them with so we do have an association called All Island Tax Administrator Association, where the insular areas, usually not Puerto Rico, but usually it's going to be American Samoa, USVI, CNMI, and Guam, where we get together annually. And of course, we help each other, right? We try to address the issues that are unique, of course, to the insular areas. But we do have, some of them are mirror code territories like us. And so what we have done is we have connected our attorneys with the general counsels for the IRS and also the general counsel for USVI, which is also a mirror code territory, and have opened up discussions even with the CNMI, their Rev and Tax attorney, so that way, again, we can share information, we can have them have the benefit of that information. But no, they are not specialized in
Well,
tax.
just noted that the concern has been raised by quite a number of us here at the legislature, because you do have in your staffing pattern the 3 attorneys listed for FY 2024. Do you currently have all 3 on staff now?
No.
You have a name for one here. Has this individual already been hired?
I'm sorry?
There are 3 names listed
Oh,
here.
you know what, I believe that, so one of our attorneys, he left in a few months ago. His name is Andrew Perez, so he is no longer with us.
Previous, okay, because it's not listed here that he had been
Yeah, I
retired
apologize.
or stepped down. It just says unclassified.
Yeah, he actually, and I apologize if it says unclassified,
Yeah,
because
he's listed in your
it is a
FY
classified position.
2024 staffing pattern,
Yeah.
so that's why that was raised.
We'll have to correct that.
I also want to follow up, because I also agree with a number of my colleagues, and I did raise this issue last year with the large number of LTAs that you had in your staffing pattern. At least last I recall, there are restrictions as to how long a LTA can be hired, and the fact that each LTA to be hired has to meet the credentials to be hired for that position.
Yes.
So I'm also echoing the concerns, because it's a substantial number of LTAs, and I hate to see this process being used or abused to get around the hiring process. And everyone always brings up, oh, it's DOA this and DOA that, and maybe DOA needs to address how they can improve their hiring process, but it's one administration, and if you prioritize and say, well, we need assistance in getting positions hired in this area, then, I assume that they should be responsive to that. But I think I certainly would not want to see this on the staffing pattern next year, because if any of these LTAs have been extended beyond a year, how do you justify that if the law restricts them simply to 1 year?
Right, and again, as I mentioned earlier, even when we came in 2019, there was existing LTAs, and there are existing LTAs from even prior to 2019 that we had.
I understand
And
that doesn't justify, if you become aware that that's not proper, then you should appropriately address
Absolutely.
how to deal with that hiring or what action to take if it has exceeded. Because there is a timeline. The intention of the LTAs, at least to my knowledge, I don't know if we need to re-examine this as a law, because I'm a little concerned with what I'm seeing as an abuse of that process. Is allowing this whole thing to get around the hiring, because all you got to do is say, hey, I'm hiring you, and that's it. I don't have to come forth, and maybe I may have the credentials, maybe I don't.
Sure.
But this should not be used as a means, especially you have a number of them listed here for collection agents, and if that is an identified position that you need at Rev and Tax, then you should work at hiring collection agents. You should not be using LTAs.
I agree, and I thank you for that point,
And
Senator.
you have a number of these that are extending over a year.
Yeah, yes, and again, that's something that we have met with our LTAs about. We have advised them of the fact that we are transitioning toward not toward decreasing and, of course, trying to work to make sure that we fund our vacant classified and encouraging them to apply for classified positions.
You know, at the end of the day, this is really an unfair deal for everybody, including the LTAs, because I'm sure, I mean, most people, I don't know anyone who doesn't, I don't know. I've never had a classified secure position in the government of Guam, so maybe that should have been my ambition, but you know, none of these people have any sense of security being in an LTA position, and especially when they're filling positions that are identified in the classified service, that to me is, I would see that as an abuse. And I'm seeing it in quite a number of agencies. Yours is one of the largest numbers of LTAs in a government agency. But before, like I said, it's the director, the deputy, maybe if you have a board secretary, and that's about it.
Thank you, Senator.
So I think you need to take note and address a correction to that, because that to me is, again, I think unless the laws have changed, would be a violation with regards to the timeline for LTA positions. With regards to your drug testing, I see you do have funds allocated for drug testing. When was the last time you had random drug tests at Rev Tax?
Actually, the funding for drug testing there is for our new hires. And so we have...
Do you have any of your positions that are identified as designated positions, any of your enforcement positions at Rev Tax?
For those that were designated drug tested, then of course those are drug tested when they are hired. Now I'm sorry, I'm not familiar, and if there is a requirement that they be drug tested annually, or
there's an existing
I
executive order that was put in place a number of years ago that did require regular drug testing of designated positions. But yeah, you don't do any designated position drug testing at all at Rev Tax?
We have not done drug testing.
Is there any reason why you've not done so at a time when we have a major drug problem on the island?
I'm sorry, again, that's something that we need to look into.
I would recommend it. I mean, I think for designated positions, I don't know if we need to mandate it by law in terms of frequency, but especially with the challenges our community is facing, I think we want to make sure all our public officials, that to me is anyone who works for the government of Guam, and so particularly in designated positions, should be more as a deterrent. I'm not looking at, hey, who are we going to catch? Hopefully they're responsible individuals, they're not on illegal drugs, but certainly if they are, they shouldn't be working for the people of Guam. That's the bottom line for me. So I would hope that you will look into that for your designated positions, because I mean, if it's just hiring them, that, you know.
I understand.
People even know now how long it takes to get certain things out of their system to do a drug test, so I don't know what that does, but okay. But yes, if you would look into that. Your office rental, I know it was increased, it listed here for 2023, but it went up quite substantially. And you mentioned a little earlier that Rev Tax is currently, you're going out to, I guess you're going out to bid for a new office space? Or?
Yes, we're at the end of our 5 years,
Your
so
5 years.
we must go out to bid for it.
Why did the increase happen in your rental from 2022 to 2023? It lists here in 2022, unless did you get additional space somewhere? It says
no, I
$768,898 in 2022, and then 2023 it went to $1,370,024, an increase of over $601,000.
You know what, and
annually.
I actually thank you so much for bringing that, because you know what I'm thinking is happening is because of the source of funding, it's looking like we're having these odd, and that's why I was wondering how come I'm hearing some odd figures that are being, because our rent is about 1.3, and that has not changed, and that's inclusive of a power. So I believe that the spreadsheet, perhaps, and I apologize, I don't have that spreadsheet.
Okay.
I believe that spreadsheet is it's based on like source of funds. So as we have, utilized different source of funding, I think you're seeing those fluctuations, but those are not true. Okay. Yeah, they're not true fluctuations, and I want to make sure maybe that we look at that, because maybe you need to look at our whole budget versus those.
Okay,
I'm sorry,
so let's say in 2022, where did the difference come in then if your total is the 1.3 annually?
Our budget, it should actually be the same, ma'am. We did not increase our rental our contracts, our rental.
For 2022, the information listed here at 768,000, is that inaccurate information, or?
And again, what I believe is happening is that the information 768 is coming from one source of fund, and it's not complete. And so if you add it all together.
Okay, so if that's the difference, then where would the difference have come from for 2022 to make 1.3?
We have multiple source of funds. We have general fund. We have the. We also have Better Public Service Fund. We have the Tax Collection Enhancement Fund. So again, it's possible that is maybe just one piece of it, but because, so as we go along and we work to make payments during the year, you know, for those sources of funds that don't have any legal limitation, of course, you know, we again utilize those funds. So I believe our rent has not increased by 600 or 700,000. Our rent is 1.3. So if you will allow me, maybe I need to look at that spreadsheet that was provided to the body, because again, maybe that's why even for some of the other senators, as they're asking questions, I'm not able to answer because I don't know what the source of information is.
I just think for the sake of transparency, it would be good to know, because it's a substantial amount. And as some of our colleagues had mentioned earlier, I think we would be very supportive of, seeing a new revenue tax building that's constructed, that's dedicated to revenue tax. Obviously, but like they say, death and taxes, you're going to be a permanent component of the government of Guam. And when you're looking at $1.3 million a year on rental, I'd rather see that money going into paying a loan for the actual construction of a facility that's designed for your needs, designed for the safety and security of the documents, and can help facilitate, the number of people that you have that, go through your agency. And I think that would be a much better long-term investment for the people.
We absolutely agree.
Than this current, $1.3 million a year that's paid for rental. Since you were mentioning special funds, do you have any other federal funds, the ARP or any other type of federal funds that revenue tax may have received? And if you are, what was it used on, and what are you going to do to address those costs as we see a decrease and essentially, phasing out of those funds,
so
if you had any?
Sure, we do have ARP monies, but the ARP monies that we were allocated are only for modernization. And so we intend to utilize those monies to move toward more online services, to move, again, to purchase equipment, like, for example, scanners, so we can, again, move toward digitization and not have these hard copy, or at least have those as a backup to our hard copies. We do already have a vision for the use of the money, but the money that we do have is only for modernization.
Okay, and are you going to be able to address maintenance of that effort after these funds phase out?
Well, so, of course, the idea is to make sure that we do that. And I mean, even when we did purchase 160 computers back in 2020, portion from our general fund budget and a portion from CARES monies, right? We had already begun to discuss, okay, how are we going to make sure that we continue to change out computers, right? And so, the hope is that if we were able to at least get the base and the majority of our agency to have to get updated equipment, and then perhaps 3 years, every year we just change out a third, or beginning every third year, right? If it's computers, you change out a third and not the whole thing. And so the plan is to make sure that we're, continuously changing out those equipment so that we stay on top of, technology, but also because they break down and we don't want to have to worry about those things. And actually, computers have become a lot less expensive now. So, again, a lot of times it's easier, or it costs less to purchase the new computer than it is to try to fix something.
Well, and I think we all appreciate that. I think, just even vehicle registration. Before I got here, I checked my mail and I got my revenue tax letter, and thank God you're not telling me I owe you money. It was my tag.
That happened to me as well.
It was my tag for my car, and I said, I'm going to go put that on my car before I drive away, because my luck, I'll get pulled over. So I appreciate, I think we all do. It has made such a difference of, things like that. You can get it done, it's convenient. And then I also appreciate the fact that revenue tax did address the issue, because my car was due in May and we had the typhoon. That when I did go on, to get it registered, we didn't get penalized for that additional time in May. So I think we all recognize and appreciate the efforts of you and your staff to help facilitate the online efforts that you have available. I did want to ask, because of this growing problem we're seeing on Guam, I just see this car on Route 4, and I drive down today and I see that it's, you know, it's been vandalized, it's been burned. But, you know, we go through this vehicle registration every year. We pay 100 plus, what I don't know what it is now. Here's my credit card, Charlie. You know, we pay these funds every year for registering vehicles, and yet we're still back at the same situation where vehicles get abandoned. Maybe a day or two, the license plate's there, then it disappears, then the tires disappear, and then it gets burned. And then we have no responsible party. And I'm really wondering, should we require upon the sale, especially if it is a sale of a vehicle, the parties to be present or register concurrently with revenue tax and transferring ownership of a vehicle, so that there is some responsible party that can be tracked down in this modern day, rather than this being a burden of the people in the community of having to deal with these eyesores and hazards of these cars being abandoned on the side of the road.
Absolutely, and so of course we did have a roundtable hearing on the abandoned vehicle issue, and it's ongoing. It's I guess an issue that's been in existence for a while. And that's something, again, that we definitely need to work to address. With regards to the law, and I know I just wanted to share, because during the roundtable hearing, there was, you know, again, there was discussion of the law. The law sets out the various, I guess, legal requirements for each of the agencies, or legal responsibilities for each of the agencies. And so DRT's responsibility in terms of the abandoned vehicle process is to make sure that we send out notices to the registered owners once the abandoned vehicle is identified, and that information is provided to us by the correct authority. And then from there to auction, if it goes above a certain amount, or the value of the vehicle is a certain amount, or to, I guess, dispose of it if it's less than $100 or something. So that is the DRT's involvement based on the law. But we do recognize that the issue of abandoned vehicles is quite significant. You know, and that's, again, I don't think that's something we see on our roads, and it's unfortunate.
Yeah, I mean, if we're going to pay that much a year to register a vehicle, there has to be some value in having that vehicle registered.
Right, I believe it's $25. There's the value. There's a $25 that goes into the, and I'm so sorry, I don't remember the fund. There used to be the recycling revolving, but it's no longer called that.
Well, I'm just looking at it as an option, because I don't see the value of us registering a vehicle every year, and then when we need to track down who owns the vehicle, we can't find that person. It makes no sense, but I just think we need to keep that issue on the table. I don't have any further questions. A lot of key points certainly were also brought up by our Oversight Chair, Senator Sabina, and so I appreciate her doing that. That helped address a number of the questions. And I personally have had no difficulty in the times I've gone to Rev and Tax over the years for whatever things I've needed or information I've needed, or to facilitate getting a driver's license or whatever the case may be. So, you know, I have no complaints or concerns in that area of Rev and Tax, but please take note of the issues that we've raised so that hopefully they can be addressed appropriately. Thank you very much for your time this afternoon. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Brown. Senator Canada, questions or comments for the panel?
Hopefully, good afternoon. Thank you guys for being here today. Thank you to your administrative team behind as well. So certainly we have a lot of issues we wanted to address. There is an ongoing typhoon recovery right with you guys. I know that some documents were damaged. So is there any reason you guys you guys are unable to destroy those documents?
So
I'm a big proponent of digitizing all the documents. I understand that some of those information are already digitized. So my understanding is then why we have to save the paper, right?
Right, and so of course there are laws which set forth, retention, right? And so there are some things that we have to keep permanently. I believe for income taxes, I think we have to keep them for 50 or 75 years. It's like something really, really large, and that's in the law. So perhaps there is a need for us to look at some of those laws so that, you know, as we move toward digitization, it kind of goes hand in hand, right? But, you know, again, where it is required for us to keep the documents permanently, my understanding is that we are keeping them.
Okay. Also, another one is, you know, the license plates that you guys issue out, or the new vehicles that are purchased or whatever dealership, right? these dealerships are giving out license plates of just hand marking on it. Sometimes the letters or the numbers fade away for whatever reason, right? Is there a reason why you guys have shifted to that we don't have dealer license plates anymore? Because I'm just going to tell you from my experience, I got hit and run over at Shirley's having breakfast. The vehicle that hit me, we cannot track out the vehicle's VIN number from the license plate because it's just already pixelated, washed off, and the information is unable to be tracked.
So
I even called the dealership. So
are you referring to a faded plate?
yeah, the plate is the temporary.
Oh, you're referring to a temporary. So when a vehicle is just sold new, you know, the initial, until we're able to get those documents from the dealership and process them so that we can issue the license plate, those ones. Of course, we give the temporary, and that's not unusual. That's something that even if you travel to the States, you see temporary paper plates, right? That's something that I've seen. But of course, in this last year, we did run into supply chain issues, right, because of COVID. And so we did have delays in shipments in this past year. Plus, we also were backlogged. In addition to the delay in shipment, that we were backlogged on work. What our team has done is work to try to get as up to date as possible on the issuance of the vehicle, then the actual physical license plates. And so I believe we're actually within the last couple of months. So, you know, we are continuing to work toward making sure that we issue those regular license plates as quickly as possible.
Okay, but it's still, you know, even if you had a video camera and you're trying to track out the identify the vehicle and the ownership, it's hard. All I know is that it's a Buick, a white car, and it hit my truck. That's all I know, because the license plates, even in the front and the back, are both really small. You can't even read the license. But if it is a license plate, dealer 139, dealer 144, you know, you pick it up easier, right? Then we can track the.
Okay.
So it's a little bit difficult, and of course I'm going to take care of it myself. But
okay.
I wanted to ask on another question is, what is the status of your space lease and solicitation being issued?
So we have been working on trying to issue an IFB for office space for several months now, and we've been going back and forth with GSA on it.
Okay.
I was communicating with the Chief Procurement Officer earlier today and hopeful that we can work to try to get a status on that, but our lease ends in September 30. And, you know, of course, that is not very far away. So, you know, this is something that we need to make sure that we address and work on. Our team has been looking at what the holdover provisions there may be in our lease so that we make sure that we understand what's involved. And, but definitely our priority is to make sure that we issue the IFB so that we can, you know, have some level of finality in terms of what it is that we're going to be doing in this year. Because if we are going to move, and we're moving 180 people, and we're moving, there's a lot involved, not just going to be for the office space, for the move, for build-outs if there's going to be needing any. So it's going to take quite a lot of effort from our agency in order to undertake such thing. So it is a priority for us, and that's something that it's an active procurement, but that's something that we're actually going to have to be working with GSA to figure out how we could get out as soon as possible.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. What is the status of IRS trainings and for the collection branch and audit examination branch?
So
I'm not too sure if you answered that earlier. I had to step out. Okay.
It's okay. So, you know, of course, we do have, I believe it's TAP grant funding, technical assistance program, I believe, grant funding to fund revenue officer and revenue agent training. And we are hopeful that that we will be able to have IRS trainers for revenue agents and revenue officers come to Guam in January. I believe we've already identified a trainer for revenue officers. So that's, but we're still working to try to identify somebody for our revenue agents, but we're hopeful that those can happen in January 2024.
Awesome, thank you. Is there a possibility for us to extend permanently waive the credit card debit transaction fee?
So as of now, I believe there is no, I believe it's called a discount rate that's being charged, or sorry, there is no credit card fee that's being charged for credit card or debit card payments, but that's a question that I'd have to defer to the Department of Administration.
Okay. Thank you so much. Again, you know, I'm a big proponent of tax collection. Accountability begins not only with the legislative branch, but again with you guys. So we know that there's an ongoing litigation issues with tobacco and alcohol, right? Obviously, our conflict of interest, but we also want to make sure that we're accountable for the military contract spending. So it is my hope that we've already had an oversight hearing. I'm not here to oversight you, but I really wanted to just follow up if we're tracking well with that. I know, how are we doing with that? One can answer the tobacco and alcohol tax collection, and then one can answer the military contractor.
Okay, with regard to the tobacco and the stamps in particular, there is, as I mentioned earlier, there's an active procurement or IFB out for that. So in the meantime, what we are doing is we are continuing with the bonded warehouse process. Back in April, there were 2 different hearings in which I testified, and on one of them in particular, the wholesalers were also invited to come and provide testimony. And I think that was in particular on feedback on the proposed bill 4737, which did not pass. However, at that hearing, they did say that they felt that the process, they were confident with the process. In fact, I think I even mentioned at that hearing that, you know, likely, you know, while it is sometimes nearly an all-day affair for our employees to undertake, that, you know, sometimes it's not enough for some of the wholesalers, you know. In fact, I get calls, you know, saying, you know, could we schedule an extra, you know, visit, you know, or what have you. So we continue with that, and I will keep you and certainly our oversight chair apprised of any updates.
Okay. Yeah, we want to certainly make sure we collect all the money we can, right? The government, obviously, we need to pay a lot of financial strain from this typhoon. It is a disaster, but we got to make sure we try to collect as much as possible. So with that being said, so is there an RFB out for the cigarette stamp? Is that what?
So it's actually an IFB.
Okay.
And so the idea is, you know, once we identify a successful bidder, or a successful bid has been identified, then what will happen is the RFP, you know, will follow. You know, that's how it was done when I first assumed the project, and we pretty much duplicated that because I think the concern was while there was only one bid for that. IFB, that perhaps we hadn't, you know, cast a wide enough net, or, you know, first for one reason or another, there just weren't, it didn't attract enough interest. So we said we were going to try it again, and that's what we've done. We submitted it.
Okay. Definitely want to keep, you know, that information forwarded to me as soon as possible. With that, military contracts.
So in the federal military contractor project, as I think I mentioned, we had what we called phase 1, and we were going to begin to work on phase 2. You know, of course, because of our staffing issues, we're having to take a bit of a different approach, but we're definitely moving or continuing to make progress in terms of looking at the federal military contractors.
Okay, thank you. Again, let us know how else we can support you. I'm sure the finance chair is a former retiree from your branch. She wants to make sure that you guys get whatever equipment and resources you need, as well as myself. Okay, thank you guys. Have a great day, and God bless.
Thank
All right, thank you, Senator Canata. I got only one question left from my vice, and then it'll be just me, and then I'll close. Senator Tyree?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for indulging me. There was a question that I had earlier and totally forgot. Daphne, have you turned in a courtesy resignation after the governor's first term? You have not?
No, I have not submitted a resignation.
Okay, so you've been constant in continuing your position, correct?
Yes, I
Okay,
have.
thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you. Ms. Daphne or Ms. Lizama, I had a question text me. Is DRT accepting partial payment for tax owed? And I'm going to assume they are, but they need to understand they still have to pay the penalties and fines. So when somebody owes taxes, the department is accepting payment, right?
We do not turn away payment for taxes.
Right.
So
Because my understanding from revenue and tax, and I just want to make this clear, and you can confirm it. If somebody owes taxes, you come in, you can make a payment, but they also have to be informed that your payment did, the total amount owed did not yet include the penalties and fine that follows it, fees that follows it. Am I correct?
well, we're required to make sure that we follow certain laws, especially regarding income tax. So we do have our 30-day notice, I believe, and our 90-day notices. So we do advise if there is an assessment that is being made and if there is any outstanding taxes due.
Yeah, but my point is, if I owe taxes and I know I owe today, I walk in there and I say, okay, it's stated that I owe $1,300. I'm paying $300 today. I should be advised by the collection agent that, hey, yes, thank you for your $300, but please be advised, there's also penalties and fees that follow
Correct.
your next payment, and then your 13 is not 13 today. By the time you finally pay, it could be 2,000. It could be an enormous amount. I just
Correct.
want to make sure that your folks got to make sure they tell the taxpayers this, okay? And not deny the money, because I remember they never denied it before. Okay, at least we answered that. And another thing, I know a question was asked by my colleague. Banking commissioner does work directly for the director. It's in your organizational chart. Okay, I
Right.
just wanted to express that because they did ask the question. Okay. The other one is that I know it was brought up about the LTAs, and I'm not going to play politics with this. I was there in 2004, and there were over 20 LTAs. I know that for a fact because a couple of them work at the criminal investigation branch. And unfortunately, when you walked in, you had to deal with the leftovers. And I got to give credit, their assets to the department. But my concern is, and it was brought up by my colleagues, and you mentioned somebody get paid more than the classified employees. I believe you need, if you can, go back with your team, take a look at your job description, and let's come up with the pay that they should be paid. Because LTA should not be paid more than the classified. Because I do remember when I was there, quite a few of the LTAs couldn't even qualify. Remember, that was in 2004, all the way up to 2014 or 15. Many of them could not even compete for the positions that were open. Because I talked to them, Hafa, you didn't get hired? I didn't qualify. And you're still here? Oh, Lordy. But I'm concerned about the current employees. You're going to lose people like everybody else is losing because why? The pay is too low. And I know for a fact, you just can't raise it. I'm not promoting pay raises, okay? But I'm saying I know for a fact that you have specific positions throughout your department that should get a pay increase. Why? Because when somebody says, I need to talk about taxes, that's the only person they can talk to is revenue and tax folks. If they have an issue on their nonprofit or whatever organization, they'll be talking to Ms. Jenny. And sometimes some of the folks you got there are, I hate to say this, but they're underpaid. I feel for them and I understand where they come from, but I just want you to take a look at it because the last time I know adjustment was made was in criminal investigation branch when they literally sat down and we had to rewrite the job description and everything changed. And I know for a fact when you say you're going to get IRS training, that should be a catch. If you don't have the IRS training, you cannot be hired there, period. And that's how you grow your personnel, and that's something you need to seriously consider. Please. And that being said, I don't have any other questions, and there's no one else here to testify. I want to thank you and everyone for attending this hearing and for providing feedback, suggestions, and please, I thank you and your employees. You guys do a great job. How you survive in that old building, I don't know. I'm still going to figure out a way how to find new property. Maybe convince one of my colleagues that we give up some property somewhere. Because $1.3 million, if you've been paying that for 10 years, you would have owned the building already. And it could be a lease to own, and it's done. And it could be a lot bigger, and I know that you have 5 acres you're using up there. All you need is 10. And you could do everything Monday to Friday and no weekend road testing, nothing. Everything's Monday to Friday. But The Department of Revenue and Taxation budget hearing is now adjourned. The time now is, 5 o'clock. Si Zeus Marcy, and thank you for your time. Please be safe and enjoy your weekend. Thank you.